What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Happy Friday, 3 o'clock, early start. Happy early Friday afternoon. Hopefully the day is going pretty quickly, pretty well for you guys. Everybody's plowing on toward their weekend. Appreciate everybody getting here a little bit early. Got Poe DJ and Stoner in the chat. We've got Calvin. We've got D. Happy Friday back at you, D. Calvin says back at it again today. Always. That's it. Just get right back on it, back on the horse. Just keep on going, keep on grinding. That's the move. That's the DFS life for sure. Looks like a good slate tonight. We're starting up early because I've got my fantasy football draft tonight, and I got to get over to Belleville, New Jersey, to my buddy Lou's house. Last time ever at Louis' parents' house. He doesn't live there, hasn't lived there in 20-something years at this point. Has his own house, his own family, and all of that. But we still have the draft at his mom and dad's house every year. It's been going on at that house for the last 29 years, this league. I've been in it for, I think, probably like 20. Those guys were friends before I knew them. But this will be the last one. Louis' parents are selling the house. So the last time over at Casa de Palante tonight. So that'll be fun. But that's why we're starting up early. I am still underprepared, I think, for the football draft. If you got your favorite wide receiver or running back sleeper picks, late round picks, drop them into the chat. Need some suggestions for later in the evening when I'm going to be several IPAs in the bag. I'll have fallen behind on keeping track of who's been picked on my tools and my rankings, so I'll just completely have no idea. So I'll need a few darts to throw. I was thinking about doing the show live from Lou's backyard, but I thought that might be a little bit much. Getting over there at like 4, doing the show, sitting there and having a couple beers with everybody hanging out from the backyard, like on their Wi-Fi with like 12 other people on the Wi-Fi, seemed like a stretch. Dimitri's here. D said big slate. Let's get one tonight. Actually, Dimitri said that. D says that's sweet. Four Prong Dinger says cool story. I don't know if that was sarcastic or not. It wasn't that cool a story, but it is what it is. But I hope you enjoyed it. IPAs are definitely the move tonight, D. That's for sure. That's I've become a beer snob in my later years. It's just it's basically just IPAs. I think I've talked about this before, but like the Bud Lights of the world, the Coronas, the Killians and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. I don't really like them anymore. I just I like the thick bitter taste of the IPA for one, and then it's just so much stronger. So I teased my dad or my uncles when I was at the track the other day. He was like, "Hey, can I get you a beer?" I was like, "Well, you appear to be drinking a Michelob Ultra," and I was like, you could have 15 of those and get to the point where I'm going to be at after like 4 IPAs. It's just IPAs are the move. Four prong, tradition matters. I agree. It's definitely fun to have these leagues. That's why I love our the baseball league that I refer to all the time. That's like the most complicated league in America. Football league's a lot more straightforward. We made it a super flex this year, so there's 2 quarterbacks. I mentioned on the show the other day I kept 3 quarterbacks in the late rounds. So I've got, going into the draft, I have no first round pick because I traded it last year to make a run, ended up in second. You're only allowed to trade 1 draft pick during the season, but during the offseason you can do a lot of like flipping around. You have to keep it even, but you can move up. So I traded a few keepers, got a few like 5th and 6th round additional picks. So I've got a lot in the middle of the draft that I kind of have to nail if I'm going to be at all competitive this year. But then I have Watson, Tua, and Danny Dimes in like the 12th, 14th, and 16th rounds out of a 20-round draft, I think. 10 teams, super flex. It's going to be a shortage of quarterbacks for some people out there. I think people are underestimating super flex and how important it is to have multiple options for bye weeks and everything. But like I said, if you got favorite running back or wide receiver keepers, late round picks, drop them into the chat for me. I will take suggestions. 16 people here. We do have a very interesting, pretty big slate. I'm not going to be playing the full slate. I might throw a lineup or 2 in just to have something in there, but not going to be playing the full slate. We've got the rankings and the home run picks are up on the site. Since I was doing the show early, not playing a full slate of 150 lineups, kind of punted on the article today. Little cheat on the article today. We're going show only, so we'll do a nice deep dive here. I went into the slate. Obviously, I looked through everything. I took a couple quick notes on some of the pitchers to refer to here, but we're gonna dig through this thing and we're going to find some good plays. We're going to talk it out. Tons and tons of pitching on this slate, it looks like. But we're seeing some good power come through in the tools, so it should be an interesting one. Fanatics here. Fanatic says, who likes drinking watered down beer? Yeah, exactly. D says, never drink light anymore. Yep, I'm with you. Even like the non-light versions, like a Coors Gold and shit like that. It's just like, yeah, it doesn't do it for me. Those are all right. Like if I've had a couple of IPAs and then I switch over, like once you get past the taste barrier, the fact that it just doesn't taste like it just tastes like weird water. It's just completely different consistency than an IPA. If you switch over at a certain part of the night, it just, you can kind of just keep on rolling, pounding those. Power says, I love a good IPA. If you can get a hold of Bass Pale Ale, you won't be disappointed. All right, keep an eye out for that one. I don't know that I've seen that one. There's so many out there, though. I mean, there's a pretty good store down the block from me, and you go in there and he's got like 4 cases that are just dedicated to different kinds of IPAs. And I just get overwhelmed by the marketing. It's just like, everybody's got these really cool cans, a lot of cool art on their boxes, on their cans. So it's just like, wow, which one looks cool? Which one's got the fun name? And then you start checking the alcohol by volume content and you make your decision. But yeah, there's so many different directions to go. So many different microbrews and all of that. Ken Woodhouse is here. What's up, Ken? Fanatic, Jake Swills. I think we said hi to everybody who's hanging out. So, Four Prong Dinger says just still the best deal in DFS. Beers are just upgraded water anyway. You're not wrong. I can't do like the pounding shots during a fantasy draft though, or like sitting there just like nursing glasses of scotch. That would be an interesting way to go. I would have a really good draft through like my first like 4 glasses of scotch, and then things would go really haywire, and I'd be talking about like how sad it is that guys get concussions and die and stuff like that by like the 6th one. Scotch has a weird impact. Let's get into this thing. We'll start over on the runs board. A lot of interesting spots. A lot of the home teams obviously pulling really strong numbers. So we've got 4 teams over the 5-run mark, another 3 in the 4.7, 4.8 range. So a lot of potential spots for run scoring today, and a lot of pretty interesting matchups. Some we just saw, like the Braves and the Giants series. We just saw Spencer Strider dominate that Giants team. Spoiler, he's at the top of the board for pitching today. I think that's a really good spot. Dylan Cease against the Athletics is a really strong spot for a guy who's an up and down kind of a pitcher in the Athletics. Like we looked at yesterday before that game, do have an odd amount of pretty decent premium contact in that lineup now. They went out, they hit a handful of home runs yesterday. Obviously, that game went off a little bit. When we were talking about it, we said, most likely game on the slate to go off, most likely to have both sides score some runs. I wanted to try and navigate around some of the public ownership on that game. It obviously didn't work out. It's exactly what I did. I went exactly down the line of what we talked about on the show yesterday with where my ownership was going to be. Didn't quite work out. Had some chasers, but didn't get there. Didn't have enough of those White Sox and Athletics. But I think this is a totally different spot. I think Dylan Cease has more than enough talent to dominate that Athletics team. Kodai Senga, this is a both-sided spot. He's pulling a really strong projection against the strikeouts in that Angels lineup, but they're putting some power back on the board right immediately against him. And he's not lousy for power, so it's an interesting result in the home run model. A little bit of it is carried by Ohtani, who is in the projected lineup, but obviously I'm not 100. Oh, wait. Nope. It's confirmed now. He's in the lineup. So that's helpful. So that's a both-sided spot. Woodruff, kind of rocky in his couple of starts. Hunter Green had that disaster. This is probably too high, actually. I forgot to change the innings projection on him. I wouldn't expect that he's going to carry. He threw a lot of pitches in that game, so he might have enough to get there, but I feel like that's probably a little bit high. A lot of good pitchers through the middle. Didn't mean to necessarily include Brandon Pfaadt, but like all of these guys are at worst mix and match options for price. A lot of good mid-range pricing. So it's a really high peak. It's a really broad middle. And it's kind of a comfy bottom end of the board too. Lance Lynn lurking down here for very expensive prices, but facing the Red Sox is kind of a weird option off the bottom. But there's guys like, Brady Singer against the Mariners who could push a ton of strikeouts in his direction on the right night. Webb, if he comes back strong against the Braves, could certainly have a better game than what he's projected for here, given his ability to limit power on the right night. It just Didn't work out for him against this same Braves team just last week, but he's got another shot at it today. Chris Sanchez could have a decent game. Cutter Crawford could have a decent game, but he's facing the Dodgers, so probably not. But there's a lot of interesting options just up and down the board today. You could leave out everybody from below Logan Webb and be perfectly fine with your pitching pool. This is still a very deep pool, still a lot of options on it. Mitch Keller, but he's facing the Cubbies. Tanner Bybee, as good as he's been, facing the Blue Jays. And all these, there's a lot of days where these are the top projections on the slate. So it's just a really deep pitching slate. But a few good spots for offense. So we'll get into the game by game of it. Grab whatever lineups are here. So the Angels are in. The White Sox. Let me grab those. Bear with me one sec. I'll pop back over to the chat. Say hi to everybody. I am planning on trying to get out of here at... I was looking at like 5 as the cutoff. I'd like to keep it to 2 hours so that people who need to catch up will get the full show. I think YouTube cuts off the live broadcast recording at 2 hours. So I'm going to try and get through it quickly. We'll see how we do. And then I do have to get out of here around 5 to get over to the draft. So that is why we started early. But let's see what's going on over in chat. D says, I thought he had an injury. Ohtani? So he tore his UCL, but he's going to play through it as an offensive player right now, at least until he gets a second opinion on whether he should go for TJ. But he's not going to pitch again this season. So he is still in the lineup. That could easily sap his power a little bit. Obviously, an elbow is an important piece of mechanics for swings. But he's in there. So if he's in their lineup, he's going to be a part of Angel stacks, obviously. So first game on deck, Cole Irvin, Kyle Freeland, couple of pretty limited lefties. I think this just leads us to a little bit of offense for the Orioles on their side of this game. They ranked out 10th overall on a pretty deep slate, 8th by FanDuel points per dollar, 15th by DK points per dollar, a little bit more expensive relatively on the DK slate, 13th by home runs because Freeland not awful for home runs in a larger sample, but this year he's given up a decent amount, 4.09%, 43.8% hard hits, 8.8% barrels, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo. So I just think Freeland's a target here, 5.02 ERA and a 5.14 xFIP, tons and tons of contact available with a 14.8% strikeout rate. So we're just going to this Orioles lineup. I really like Adley Rutschman, like we talk about all the time. Very limited strikeouts, puts the ball in play like crazy, draws walks, hits for a decent average, especially for a catcher, decent amount of power, especially for a catcher, creates runs like crazy, just really good, and he picks up plate appearances by the virtue of leading off every day. So Rutschman's a leading catcher on basically any slate that he's in the lineup. They have tons of power right here. Mountcastle, Santander, Gunnar Henderson, excellent power options. Gunner's been getting his lefty plate appearances, and he's been succeeding for the most part of late, so I expect him in there, especially against a weak lefty like Freeland. And he's carrying a pretty decent home run mark, 7.60. That's third on the team today. So pretty good upside for Gunnar. Overall, an 11% barrel rate, 53.1% hard hits, 21 home runs on the season, trailing Santander, who's got 24 now to lead the team. 119 WRC plus for both those players in the heart of the lineup. Austin Hayes climbs the lineup a few spots, righty versus a lefty, 3,800, 2,700. A good season for him, 281, 328, 452, creating runs well above average, 12 homers. Not an elite player, but he's not priced like it. He's priced fairly as like a good mid-range player who's got a good spot in the lineup. Westberg, premium prospect, hasn't fully clicked. He's been good, not great. 264, 299, 403, 2 homers, 3 steals. Effective enough, and a really good 48.2% hard hit rate from the right side of the plate to throw at Freeland. So I definitely wouldn't skip Westberg in a lot of Orioles stacks. I think he's an important piece. Cedric Mullins lurking down here. I don't worry about the lefty with this lefty on the mound. 4,934 is cheap for a 30-30 guy. James McCann, righty pop versus a lefty as a sneaky catcher, and Jorge Mateo, a little bit of speed from the bottom of the Orioles lineup. So this plays very good options 1 through 7, and then 8 and 9 are at worst bolt-on parts. So I think this is a really good spot for the Orioles. They were carrying, what was their run total? 5.42. That's the highest on the board. So they'll probably be a little bit popular by virtue of being the highest run total on the board. But it's just a really good lineup. For FanDuel, they're very effectively priced, so you can get to them easily enough. I really like the spot for Baltimore. The Rockies, one of the worst lineups in baseball. We've talked about over the last couple of weeks the fact that the Rockies against left-handed pitching is the easiest, most gettable spot in all of baseball. That said, Cole Irvin is kind of a limited lefty. So, difficult call here as to whether or not he's even on the board. He just barely projects like it, given the very low pricing. I do think a few darts, but it's a very deep slate. So, he's just likely to get outpaced by other options that are a little bit better. But just to put it in perspective, the Rockies' active roster against left-handed pitching, WRC plus is 56. Bottom of the board in baseball collectively against left-handed pitching, a 134 ISO, and they strike out at a 29% rate against lefties. That's for the entire active roster. A lot of their key hitters are lefties. Nolan Jones does well in the lefty-lefty split, like we looked at, small sample, but does well. McMahon loses quality in the lefty-lefty. Blackman in the leadoff role is playable, but loses quality lefty-lefty, if I remember correctly. I haven't checked him since he's come back to the lineup, but remembering back, I think he loses a little bit, but is still good for what he basically does these days. I can look it up. Didn't need to stumble through that if I was just going to end up looking it up anyway. Lefty, Blackman, career. Yeah, drops to actually better average, better triple slash. So not bad. Loses power. 157 career ISO versus a 205 against righties. 108 WRC plus versus a 112 versus righties. But the triple slash actually does go up. 304 versus 290, 304, 361, 461 versus 293, 352, 498 for the career. So he is better. He is, comparably good against lefties. This year, small sample. Similar results. Lower end triple slash against lefties this year. Last year in a larger sample, triple slash goes up against lefties. So hits for average against lefties, but not power. That was Charlie Blackman off the top. And then you get like Ezequiel Tovar, Elias Diaz. McMahon loses all his quality against lefties. Brendan Rodgers, kind of a mixed option. No home runs, no power to speak of this year. Not relating for any average or creating runs in his 72 plate appearances. Did hit for mid-teens home runs each of the last 2 years. Moderate option. Eleodoro Montero, believable right-handed power down at the bottom of the lineup for 2,600, 2,300. He's got 5 home runs, but 219, 253, 372. Creating runs 50% worse than average over 194 plate appearances now. Alan Trejo, Brenton Doyle. It's a targetable lineup with pitching, and especially with left-handed pitching. It's just Cole Irvin is a 20.5% strikeouts. It's just barely good enough. 4.66 ERA, 4.70 xFIP. The home run rate is fine. The hard hits are fine, but there's a lot of barrels there. Walks into the wrong contact against the Nolan Jones and Montero, to a lesser degree of Brendan Rodgers and Elias Diaz. It's not great. It's difficult to put any faith in Cole Irvin. It's absolutely the right matchup for the spot. So 5,000, couple value darts on DK. I think you can get away with it. 62 is probably a stretch on such a deep slate on FanDuel, but it is the right matchup. So Orioles bats big, yes. Rockies bats as a hedge position if you do take Cole Irvin, or as like a low-owned cheapo stack if you want to, but no success this year against lefties. They're ranked 21st by fantasy points, 17th by home run upside, 21st by FanDuel value, and 18th by DK value. So not a good spot. So yeah, Orioles bats and then Cole Irvin value darts is really the only other key part of it, and that's only if you want to throw them. It's not a mandatory part of the slate by any means. But come on. Cubbies and the Pirates. We have the Cubs. We do not. So, Mitch hit the board for us pretty hard last time. Doesn't project nearly as well this time. It's an okay projection. 9,700, 8,800. He's still cheap. I think he's a playable part, but I just really like the Chicago lineup. Even if I don't go to the Chicago lineup that much, I would just have a healthy respect for their ability to sequence, their ability to get on base, their ability to create runs. Everybody in the projected Chicago lineup is above average for run creation, including now Nico Horner, who got himself above average yesterday with an okay game. Oh, actually, John Gomes is at the league average, so close enough. A lot of power, a lot of speed through this lineup, and all these very, very good on base percentages. Average on base 342 for that squad. Very, very good. By comparison, on the other side, average on base for the Pirates 320. Actually, a little bit better than I was expecting. But still, Cubby's really, really good at getting on base. Keller's been mostly effective, but it's been a complete roller coaster. His bad starts have been really bad. His good starts have been pretty good. That last start, 12 strikeouts in 6 innings against Minnesota. That was really good. 2 earned runs, 7 hits after a few bumpy starts prior to that. So if we get that version of Mitch, that's a home run tonight, obviously. For value, that's a tremendous, tremendous spot. But the Cubbies are better than that Twins team. There's fewer strikeouts in this Cubs lineup than against that Twins team. They've got guys like Mike Tauchman at the top of the lineup who strike out at an okay rate and draw walks. Guys like Ian Happ who strike out somewhat aggressively but draw walks. That's where a lot of the on-base percentages come. So I really think this is the right kind of team to frustrate Mitch Keller, draw out the bad version of Mitch, or even at least the bumpy version of him. He does give up a lot of premium contact with 8.9% barrels, only 34.4% hard hits, 87.5 miles an hour of exit velo, so he's controlling it. But he is hitting that key home run part of the home run combination on premium contact a little bit. Pushing a 3% home run rate, not high. 2.86 is very good, but has had his games where it's been a little uglier than that. 4.22 ERA, 3.70 xFIP on the season. I think Mitch is somewhat targetable with Cubs bats. They'd be a middle priority, I think. Where do they fall on the board? They rank higher than that. So Cubbies rank 3rd by collective fantasy point projections, 4th by FanDuel value, and 10th by DK value. But they dropped to 20th by home run upside, given that Mitch has been good at limiting some of the home run marks this year. So I think our usual core of guys right through here, plus the bolt-ons up here. But there's a lot of skill right here. 3 through 8. Ian Happ, excellent option to get on base. Has his own power, a little bit of speed. Cody Bellinger having a great season. 320, 368, 548, creating runs 43% better than average. 17 steals, 20 home runs. Excellent year for him. Dansby Swanson up to 19 home runs, a 185 ISO, 110 WRC+. Will probably finish around the 25 home runs that he usually hits as an underrated shortstop option, and he's pretty cheap, 5,200, 3,200. Seiya Suzuki, not having an outstanding year, but he's got himself up to 13 homers. He's got a 7% better than average for run creation, and a really good contact profile. 9.4% barrels is pretty good. 46.9% hard hits is very good from a guy who costs 3,500, 2,900 in the outfield. That's outstanding contact for that price. Candelario and Chris Morel down bottom of the lineup, multi-position eligible for both of them on DK. Triple position for Morel, but only third base for Candelario on the FanDuel slate. 2 good hitters. Both have tons of power, 18 home runs and 19 home runs respectively, 222 and 242 ISO. The third highest mark and the highest mark on the team. So very, very good options down lineup. And then Tauchman's playable from that leadoff spot for cheap. Horner's playable, although 5,836, despite another good game yesterday, I still think he is a little bit expensive for what he does on the field. But that said, he's a very, very playable part from the top of the lineup and a key part at a second base position. So definitely not a guy to skip all that often. On the Cubs side of things, Hendo, 7,200, 8,600. He projects out okay. Projects out okay for the money. That's not a bad spot for that relative pricing. Not a good pitcher, more of an innings guy. 15.7% strikeout rate. Pitches clean though, 4.2% walks. Doesn't get himself in a lot of trouble. A 3.83 ERA, a 4.48 xFIP, 2.70% home runs on 31.2% hard hits. So it's not like the Pirates are pulling big numbers against him. I think it's a low priority Pittsburgh stack. They rank 14th. They do show good value numbers on the DK slate. A lot of low prices on DK. 14th by fantasy points, 14th by FanDuel points per dollar, but 4th by DK points per dollar. So you're getting a lot of good values there. Relative pricing on FanDuel doesn't actually look that bad. I guess it's just the way it hits with the projections. Definitely low prices on the DK slate, though. Sawinski for 3,600. He was my overall home run pick of the day. Just like that lefty bat, that power hitter against Kyle Hendricks here. 10.95 in the model, leads the team. You get Brian Reynolds, you get Andrew McCutchen, Some Connor Joe maybe in there. Some Josh Palacios, who's been on a little bit of a run. 176 plate appearances, 6 home runs, a 177 ISO. A little bit of a run for power anyway. 9.5% barrels, 44.5% hard hits for 2,500, 2,200. Hitting cleanup as a lefty against a limited righty who allows a lot of power. I think that, or not a lot of power, a lot of contact, just flat contact, the 15.7% strikeout rate. He's good at limiting premium contact. McCutch, Reynolds, playable veterans. Brian Hayes, all his premium contact. Definitely the idea, again, of contact available. A guy doesn't strike out at a crazy rate and makes very good contact going up against a pitcher who allows the contact but limits the good contact. It's just an interesting combination of factors. I think it tends to work out in Hendricks' side where he keeps him limited to his typical 3-4 runs. He pitches 5-6 innings but doesn't have a big strikeout total. Kind of limits both sides. So I don't really love either side of that combination. If I'm going to it for DFS purposes, I think particularly on DK, you can probably extract a little value from the Pirate stack. Definitely would start with Jack Suwinski and build around him, probably working a little bit up the lineup there. Hope that he clears the bases of some of these guys. And then maybe you work in like a G1 Bay or an Alika Williams for very, very cheap. Jason DeLay on DK, I guess, as a catcher, but kind of a limited catcher. 146 plate appearances, 277, 340, 392, a 101 WRC plus, only 1 home run, limited premium contact. He's very cheap though. Might be better as a 3-man, like a 1-2-3 or like a 1-2-3 or 1. You could even go like if you wanted to just straight line it through those guys, or like bang 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 and him. A lot of ways to work with the Pirate stack. I'll say that. They're at least interesting for constructions. So, Cubbies. Some shares of Mitch Keller from that broad tier of mid-range guys. Projects in the middle, priced in the middle. Some shares of Cubbies for or Pirates for value. So Cubs bats, Keller mid-range, Pirates value play. And then Keller, if you wanted to throw a couple value darts, he's priced appropriately for it for the matchup against the Pirates. It's a non-threatening matchup. It's more of like an SP2 play, just find some clean innings and a somewhat secure floor. Not totally safe, but somewhat secure floor of fantasy points for 7,200. Limited play, though. Cards and the Phillies. I think the Cards lineup dropped. It did. Tyler O'Neill hitting second, like that. Let's see here. I was expecting a little bit more of a projection on Christopher Sanchez, 7,700, 8,100. He projects out okay, similar to like what Hendricks was for similar kind of pricing. But I was thinking maybe a little bit more, given that he's pitched pretty well this season. 3.36 ERA, a 3.44 xFIP, only a 1.03 WHIP, 22.7% strikeouts, 4.7% walk rate, 8.7% barrels is a lot, 4.30% home runs is a lot. Went 6 innings each of his last 2 starts, 5 strikeouts against the Twins, against both the Twins and at Washington, 2 earned runs both of those starts. So pitches somewhat effectively for 6 innings, but the Cards on the other side, a lot of good players in that lineup, heavily right-handed team, entirely right-handed lineup outside of Tommy Edman, who will hit from the right side of the plate as a switch hitter. So pretty threatening spot for him. So I get why he's not really coming through the model. I do think he's an effective enough pitcher that you could throw some darts at him as a mid-range play. Priced a little bit lower than Mitch Kellers of the world, slightly higher than Hendricks with a similar projection, but the matchup's not ideal for the lefty. I do think he's an effective enough pitcher, though, so might be another one of those spots where Cards don't really blow him up. They score a handful of runs. He's not having a great start, but he's not total disaster. St. Louis ranks 20th by fantasy point projections, to put that in perspective, but 6th by home run potential. So kind of a mixed option on the St. Louis side. Let's see what's going on in chat. Podegen says, Cliff Notes, Rockies suck. Play if you hate yourself, Baltimore righties. Mullins got scratched for Baltimore. So, yeah, for Baltimore, Mullins got scratched. So that lineup is Rutschman, Mountcastle, Santander, Austin Hayes, Gunnar hitting 5th, James McCann 6th, Jordan Westberg, who I still like 7, Ryan McKenna slotting in 8th, and then Jorge Mateo. McKenna's a mixing guy. He was the one that wasn't in the lineup before. But McKenna, it looks like, moves up from where we had him projected. Could just grab that and show it on the screen. Easy enough to do. This is that Baltimore lineup. So still tons of quality through there. And then McCann gains quality by moving up the lineup. More of a play on the DK slate at 2,500, but there's just not that many times on DK that I want to skip badly in that lineup. He's one of the priority bats in that Orioles stack. So best run creator in that Orioles stack, Adley Rutschman. 123 WRC plus in the leadoff spot. So there's not many times I go to McCann instead of him. McCann with him on the FanDuel slate. Not many times I'd rather have McCann than Mountcastle, or McCann than using Santander at first base and getting or util and getting creative with things. So I don't love the McCann option, but he is in play and he does gain ground. 47% hard hits. Gains ground by moving up the lineup. Back to that Cardinals team. So if we're going to cards, which I do think is in play, Sanchez obviously giving up a lot of pop. They don't project great given this bottom end of the lineup, but Andrew Kneisner is obviously a guy that we've looked at a bunch of times. Very, very good hard hit. Very, very good barrel rate. 10 home runs on the year. A 224 ISO in his 182 plate appearances. He's the guy that we threw into the mix. Rivals Travis d'Arnaud as our favorite backup catcher in baseball right now. And he's connected for us every time we've talked about him lately. Don't want to jinx it. Wilson Contreras, obviously a very high-end catcher for them. 4,100, 2,800, 13 home runs, a 120 WRC plus. Hits from the right side. Back-to-back catchers in that lineup to get creative with on the DK slate. FanDuel slate, you can put them both in a lineup if you want to. Jordan Walker's been okay. Taylor Motter and Mason Wynn kind of dragging down the overall projection down the bottom. Mason Wynn expected to hit at this level, hit for average, steal bases, has not really delivered in 23 plate appearances so far, but has a lot of room to grow. Taylor Motter's in his 30s, not a high-end player, not a prospect, kind of a limited option at the bottom of the lineup. And then you get this power core of O'Neill, Goldie, Arenado. That's a terrific run of premium right-handed power. 20 home runs for Goldie, 26 for Arenado, 7 on the season for O'Neill, but only 209 plate appearances. Still makes very, very good contact. Tommy Edman, excellent bolt-on part from the top of the lineup. He's dropped down to 94 WRC plus. He has a shot of bouncing back up to 105 by this time next week. He's just that kind of guy. So you take him as a correlated scoring piece with these guys and hope for the best. He's cheap. He plays multiple positions. He can steal a base. He can hit a home run on the right day. Phil's going up against Miles Michaelis. Michaelis, another guy I was expecting maybe a little bit more, but I get why he's low projected against the Phillies, who are a pretty good lineup. And he is a soft tossing kind of guy who allows a ton of contact. Not terrible for home runs, but does allow a little bit more on the hard hit department. 40.5% hard hits, pushing almost 90 miles an hour of exit velo, 14.2 degree average launch, and 8.1% barrels. So definitely some home run trajectory. Definitely some home run contact. Just hasn't really, maybe he's a little bit lucky to be sitting at 2.4 versus like 3.5. That's a handful of home runs. But 4.55 ERA, a 4.64 xFIP. Hasn't been great at limiting runs, limiting scoring anyway. Very good walk rate. So he's given up a lot of just hits, a lot of contact. What's his BABIP? BABIP against has got to be pretty high. But it's a soft toss, contact-oriented pitcher. 309 BABIP against this year. Last year was 249. That's your difference. So batting average on balls in play goes up. Changes Michaelis from a 3.29 ERA with a 3.80 xFIP to a 4.55 ERA, 4.64 xFIP. It's a critical factor for a pitcher like this. He's like a Jeff McNeil of pitching, right? It's critical. Batting average on balls in play, just what happens with the weak contact that's allowed. He's also allowed a fair amount of premium contact this year, which doesn't help BABIP. If balls are getting laced for doubles, those balls on the batting average on balls in play on those obviously goes up. So between the increased contact and the BABIP, he's just gotten burnt a lot this year. So I do think we go to Phillies. Kyle Schwarber drawing a very, very good mark in the home run model. He's got 34 on the season, a 256 ISO. He's also hitting 184, not ideal, but a 332 on base, supported by a 17.3% walk rate. 3 true outcomes hitter. That's all we want from Kyle Schwarber for 55.38. Very playable part at the top of the lineup. One of my favorite options for a home run today. Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, 3 very playable hitters. Turner, 250, 303, 405, a 154 ISO, still 11% worse than average creating runs. Does have 15 home runs, 22 stolen bases, 5,300, 3,200. Very affordable for Trey Turner. It's more like Anthony Volpe level output with a much better batting average this season, but he's still Trey Turner. He's got a monster ceiling on any given slate, and the results for counting stats haven't been awful. It's the run creation, it's the consistency that's not been ideal. Harper up to 14.3% barrels, 12 home runs, 7 steals, a 133 WRC plus. The power's really come roaring back over the past couple of weeks. Seems like the elbow's feeling a little bit better as the season's gone on post-surgery. Castellanos, 4,900, 3,300, still too cheap, 275, 311, 465, creating runs 6% better than average, 21 home runs. Very, very good, consistent player in the middle of the lineup. Stott, Bohm, Marsh. I really like these 3 players from the bottom of the lineup. They've all been consistently above average all season for run creation. They steal a few bases. They hit for a little bit of power. They all hit for very good batting average, put the ball in play like crazy, get on base very well. Really, really good three underrated players here who are way too cheap or very, very affordable for their talent, let's say. Jake Cave, Garrett Stubbs, so no JT Realmuto in the lineup, 2,400, 2,100 for Stubbs. Not exactly Realmuto level output from him, more of a mixer. Jake Cave, 2,500, does have first base outfield eligibility on the DK slate, but you're not going him over Harper or Bohm at first base all that frequently. 246, 291, 423, 11% worse than average creating runs. Limited option at the bottom of the lineup. So this one's bats, I think, on both sides. Only minor darts with either one of the pitchers, and really only as a DK play. Not really too much for them on the FanDuel board, just on a deep slate. You can play them. They're in that tier of value, but more toward the bottom of that wide plateau in the mid range. So not a ton of love for either pitcher. What did the board have it as? Got to be Phillies bats up top, right? Yeah, Phil's more in the middle. Cards didn't project out great, but being dragged down a little bit at the bottom. And the other thing, the reason that the Cards power doesn't project out great, despite the 4.3 home run rate, 3.3 degree average launch angle does impact those home run marks. And as we've talked about, home runs are a little bit wonky. You can give a run 64 and a third is a small sample, so that's a handful of home runs in a small sample. The next 64 and a third innings, he gives up 1 or 2, and this number begins to look a lot different. If we include 40 innings and 3 starts from last year, 2.82% home runs, pretty decent on the premium contact, keeping launch angle down, keeping barrels down. 12 and 2/3 the year before doing the same thing. That also adds up, impacts those home run numbers. So that's why the Cards don't look quite as good as the Phillies, but I do think both sides of this are in play in terms of the stacks, just given the talent, at least 1 through 7 in this Cardinals lineup. So it's Philly stacks, Cardinal stacks. Don't really need either of the pitchers. Couple of darts from the mid range of value if you want to. Guardians, Blue Jays. We do have the Blue Jays. Oh, come on. I hate when I right click and try to copy, and something goes haywire, and it pops it up, then doesn't copy. It's probably my fault. I probably right click wrong. Something. Misspent youth, not learning how to right click properly. What was the first computer you guys grew up with? Who in the chat had the old school green screen Apple IIes when they were in 5th grade? Oregon Trail and all that shit. In just black and green. Who had that? Those were my first computers. We had, at one point, my mom brought home a computer that was like that. It was like an Apple II from work that was like an old work computer. And it was like, yeah, well, this is great, Mom, but it's the 1990s and this doesn't really do anything. So shortly after that, we got an IBM PC tower that was our first real computer with modern, with Windows and shit. Vic David Figueroa says floppy disk. I did. Yep. 83. There you go. All right. So Vic knew the old 5.5-inch floppy disks, the big wide ones. Most people remember still like, or at least like probably a lot of people in here still remember like the small discs, like the 3.5-inch ones, but those 5.5-inch ones. And then you get EMAC, who was doing like the punch cards. Hope EMAC's out there. Edward B says, I was sitting fourth last night in the DK 121 with 3 last night with late night hammers, Marte, Pham, and Gurriel, and they all shit the bed. It sucks. I like that spot too. I did have a fair amount of Arizona in my lineups too. So we started early today, like I said at the top of the show. Some people probably missed it. We got 61 here hanging out at 3:40 in the afternoon. That's awesome, guys. You guys rock. What do you guys do all day that you're just available to jump on here at 3 o'clock with me? I love it. But like I said, we started early because I got my fantasy draft tonight, my football draft. And if you guys got favorite running back, late round running backs, late round wide receivers, sleepers and whatnot, whatever you want to call them, drop them into the chat. Let me know. Curious to find out who people have their eye on. Haven't done a ton of homework for the season long. Just kind of jumping into it. Got my keeper set. It's a super flex league. Got my 3 quarterbacks all set. Don't have a first round pick, so we gotta make a lot of hay with the extra like 5th and 6th round picks that I picked up in chats, or in trades. Stephen Leibowitz says, Timex Sinclair, I really, really thought that was your favorite wide receiver sleeper for about a half a second. That would be a fantastic wide receiver name. Timex Sinclair. He runs like a sick 40. That'd be so great. And then every time he went over the middle and took like a hard hit, he'd pop back up. Oh, he takes a lick and it keeps on ticking. That would be every time. That'd be a fantastic name. Later, an Epson with a 5 1/4 floppies for DOS. Yep. Yeah, anybody who work with DOS knows what's up. Po Degen says, I need cannabis with my DFS. I feel you on that one. Gonna definitely have cannabis with my season-long draft later on. I'll tell you that. Cannabis, some IPAs. Think we're getting some chicken. Probably gonna get some pizza. It's a good time. Po Degen had the Commodore 64. Bill H, December 10th, 1975 in high school. There you go, Bill. Bill on the EMAC schedule. That's even before my time. Love it. I would have liked to have gone to high school in the 70s, I think. I'm basing most of that on like Dazed and Confused. But it looked like a lot of fun. At least that school in Texas, which I think was kind of based on Richard Linklater's life. Anyway, let's keep on moving. Still no Guardians lineup. Still no Guardians lineup. Tanner Bybee, Chris Bassett. Interesting spot for pitching. Definitely can get away with Bassett. He's given up a home run in each of his last 5 starts. 2 earned runs, 4 earned runs, 1 earned run, 4 earned runs, 2 earned runs, 6, 7, 6, 6, 6, 6 strikeouts. Consistently deep innings, consistently like mediocre performances, handful of runs, handful of strikeouts. For 8,000, 9,000 against this Guardians team, we've seen worse pitchers than Chris Bassett just completely shut this team down. He's got the depth to give you that 8 innings. I gave up a run or 2, but I struck out 6 or 7. Even against this Guardians team, if he goes 7 or 8, I expect 6 or 7 strikeouts from Chris Bassett, 22.4% strikeout rate. It's just about whether or not he manages to avoid the really bad innings that he's run into a couple times this year. When he's on, he's pretty much on. He's a relatively consistent guy, and he's very affordable. 8,000 on DK puts him firmly into the SP2 mix. He projects out at that level. 9,000 on FanDuel is a little bit pricey, given the bumps in the road, but it's a very, very good matchup. This is a really low-scoring team. The only thing it's not a great matchup for is strikeouts. Other than that, this is a really bad team. So I do think there's upside for Bassett here. At the same time, there's upside for Bybee. He's just good. 5 innings, 7 innings, 7 innings, 5 innings in his last 4 starts. 4 strikeouts, 6, 5, 6. Hasn't given up more than 3 earned runs since June 13th. That's a run of 8, 10, 12 starts. I didn't count it, but it's a long stretch, giving up 3 earned runs or less in all those starts. Overall this season, a 3.01 ERA, a 4.32 xFIP, 23.7% strikeout rate, 11.1% swinging, not giving up really much premium contact at all. 6% barrels, 89 miles an hour of exit velo is fine. It's it's that extra mile an hour between 89 and 90 tends to make a lot of difference for whatever reason. 37.6% hard hits. My point was I'd like it to be lower, but it's fine. 37.6% hard hits to go with that is very good. 2.33% home runs. Very good. So I like Bybee a lot, even with the matchup against the Blue Jays. They could put a big number on him. Home game for them, 8,300 for him is the right price on DK. Puts him right in that SP2 conversation alongside Bassett. 98, similar kind of a thing where it's like, it's probably a little pricey given the matchup, given the depth of the slate on FanDuel. But I can't imagine he's going to be owned more than 3-5% on the FanDuel slate. So I do think it's got its tournament value for sure. And there's upside. There's a bit of a ceiling on Bybee. Probably not going to see him for more than like 6 innings. But six clean innings, a handful of strikeouts, a win, a quality start. It's all on the board for him. So a minor like mid-range mix-in. Easy enough to get above the field if they're at 3 to 5. No reason to get above the field if they're at like 10. I think a lot of the gleam comes off the play if the field is at 10-12% on Tanner Bybee on FanDuel. On DK, that would be around the acceptable range, I would imagine. But that's more like I'd want to be at that range with the field lower. But I think he's on that tier of SP2s, that mid-range tier of SP2s. I do think you could take bats primarily from the Blue Jays side against Tanner Bybee. If you want to take a couple shots at Chris Bassett, you hope you get the bad Bassett night. You target some of the premium contact he's allowed. It's obviously Jose Ramirez and then whatever else you like in this lineup. My next priority would probably be Andres Gimenez, assuming he plays. Then Gabriel Arias, just looking for some of the power. You do have speed. You do have a little bit of contact ability formerly in Andres Gimenez, but only a 91 WRC plus this season. And then everybody else in the lineup. Oscar Gonzalez, 55 WRC plus and 156, not hitting for nearly the same power that he did last year. Will Brennan, 76 WRC plus, over 360 plate appearances. Bo Naylor's only been okay, 203, 287, 359, 22% worse than average creating runs, but does have 4 home runs, moderate contact. Miles Straw is a defender with some speed. Stephen Kwan is basically the same thing, but puts the ball in play a little bit more. Gets involved a little bit more just by virtue of being at the top of the lineup. But back down to 339 in the on base. He needs to trend the other way to have any kind of value. That on base needs to be sitting. I'll even give him 365 at this point. I've been saying 370 all season, but 365. Can we see 365 and get your WRC plus back up to like 110 range? He's been mostly useless at the top of the lineup this season. Cole Calhoun, a little bit of lefty power, but it's Jose Ramirez and a lot of bolt-on parts. You're just kind of targeting I think Chris Bassett has a bad day, even though there's no real good justification to think that way. So I don't love the spot for Guardians. I rarely do. They rank out very poorly on the board. They are the second to last on the board. They do have a little bit of points per dollar love on DK, 12th out of 24, so halfway down the board on DK points per dollar. Bottom of the board across the board and everything else. Or second from the bottom. Blue Jays side, obviously, you've got a lot more talent. Whit Merrifield off the top. Good mix and match play. Second and outfield eligible on both sides. 45.29. He's cheap. That's a fair price for Whit Merrifield for not just what he's done this season, but who he's been for his career, which is basically around this guy. But just a good player. Puts bat on ball well. Gets himself to first base somewhat reliably. 11 homers, 23 steals, so he can provide individual upside and just correlates well with all these guys. Bo Bichette, star shortstop, 5,400, 3,300, a little bit cheap. Brandon Belt remains cheap. Hit his 15th home run last night, 223 ISO, only 360 plate appearances. He is closing in on the team lead. Weird, a lot of mid-teens home run output, but nobody cracking 20 in this lineup so far. It's weird output for this team all season too. They haven't all been on at the same time. They've just taken turns being a little above average to good. And then, the other guys take their dips, like Springer. 15 homers, 16 steals, a 100 WRC plus from George Springer. That is not a George Springer season. This is a George Springer season. 25 homers, 14 steals, a 132 WRC plus. 22 homers, only 4 steals that year, but a 140 WRC plus at 291 ISO. I don't know. Ugly season from Springer, but it's got his cost down, 4,800, 3,100. Very affordable, easy to get to in the outfield. Vladdy obviously has a positional conflict with Belt on the DK slate. Vladdy is very cheap on FanDuel, 3,200 for Vladdy Guerrero. 268, 344, 433, a 165 ISO. It's not his numbers. It's somebody else's numbers this year, but the premium contact is what we will continue to focus on. These numbers look a lot like last year. Strikeouts are non-existent for him. He still walks, still gets on base at a pretty good clip. Creating runs 15% better than average. He's just not been fully himself, but the price being where it is, I think he's a priority bat, especially in Blue Jays stacks. But I think you can get away with some one-off Vladdy Guerrero now with him being so cheap. Dalton Varsho late in the lineup, 3,300, 2,600. Very cheap for his power. A little bit of speed from him as well. But another guy, inconsistent season, bad average, bad on base, 84 WRC plus. Chapman, inconsistent output, excellent contact, inconsistent output. 17% barrels, 57% hard hits, only 15 home runs, a 183 ISO. Both of these are good from a guy who's typically pretty cheap, pretty low owned in this lineup. 15 home runs is fine, but he had a lot of them early in the season. 183 ISO is fine, but he had a lot of that ISO early in the season, a lot of the supporting statistics for that ISO early in the season. So it's just been on and off type results, but you'll love the contact for the price at third base. Alejandro Kirk, Kevin Kiermaier, mix and match parts late in the lineup. I'll go probably, where do they rank out? Toronto's like middle of the board, Bybee's 12. So Bybee's 12 by FanDuel projection. Bassett's 8. So technically I got to put Bassett up top. I think that's all right. Given it's a matchup against the Guardians. I'm glad I thought that through for a second. So Bassett up top, definitely. Bassett, I'll go Bassett, Bybee, Blue Jays, and then really no love for the Guardians. They could do it. We've seen a couple of games where they succeed. Usually Ramirez is involved, and then like one of these other guys hits a bigger home run. Probably Gabe Arias. But it's a really bad lineup, really limited. So Bassett, Bybee, Blue Jays, and mixers of the Guardians if you want it. Dodgers with Lance Lynn. Red Sox with Cutter Crawford. We do not have the Dodgers lineup yet. So Lynn doesn't project well at all here. Fenway Park against the Red Sox. He's a guy who projects very, very well in the right spots typically. Typically works deep into ball games, finds his strikeouts. 26.8% strikeout rate on the season, but a 5.60 ERA is hurting him. A 5.08% home run rate is definitely hurting him. 10.6% barrels this year, definitely hurting him. 3.95 xFIP. He's obviously had his very good games, but he's had a lot of clunkers in there, and the Red Sox in Fenway Park seems like a spot where we're going to get, I'm not going to say definitely a clunker by any means, but maybe more of a gettable version of Lance Lynn. 9,400, 10-1. I do think he's playable, but he just doesn't project like it. A few darts, like I wouldn't completely take him out of my pool just because he's got a much better ceiling than he has a projection. On the right night, even in this park, even against this team with all these excellent lefties in it, Lance Lynn could come out, put up 10 strikeouts, and dominate this team. He is still Lance Lynn. It just doesn't project like that. He's priced like that performance is coming. So I don't love the option. Couple of darts if you want it, but he's expensive. Red Sox side of things, I think you do go to some Red Sox. Some good justification, some very good power hitters here on the left side. Rafi Devers, 11.79 in the home run model, 29 on the year, a 248 ISO. We keep coming back to him as another guy. He's maybe underperformed in terms of batting average and a little bit in terms of run creation, but those are excellent numbers for anybody. And given that it's still Rafi Devers and he's somewhat cheap, 5,600, 3,800 at third base, you're getting a superstar just discounted by a couple of bucks. All his power is still there. Justin Turner, excellent season for him, 289, 359, 484. Justin Turner's had a fantastic career, excellent hitter, and has not lost really anything at the plate. First base eligible on DK, conflicts with Tristan Casas. First and third for him on FanDuel for $3,500. Fair pricing. You can use the util spot, obviously, but you do have positional conflict if you use the util spot elsewhere. You do have positional conflict at both spots with Devers and Turner, and Casas. But you do have the flexibility of the flex spot. Verdugo, very good option, 4,200, 3,000 off the top. Lefty hitter, 345 on base, 110 WRC plus. Just look at him as a correlation play with his prices where they are. He doesn't need to do a lot individually. He's had an up and down year, but I think he's reliable enough at getting himself to first base, putting the ball in play. The big hits are there from time to time. He does have 10 homers on the season. 5.3% barrels isn't great. 37.1% hard hits isn't great, but only strikes out 14.9%. And that's consistent. Top 4 hitters. Very, very good strikeout rates. 15.8% strikeout rate on the average with Yoshida in there. Adam Duvall's got a high strikeout rate. Casas has a high strikeout rate, but walks a ton. Trevor Story, a lot of strikeouts, but excellent premium contact in his 55 plate appearances. Still looking for that first home run. Hasn't really provided a ton of value yet, but making very, very good contact. And he's cheap. 4,500 at shortstop. 2,800 shortstop and second base. Don't sleep on Trevor. Yeah, don't sleep on Trevor Story. I can say that. For a second, my brain went to, no, that's a bad pun. Don't say. And I guess it was connecting like Story to like good night story, sleep, something like that. But it was several leaps down the line, so there's nothing wrong with saying don't sleep on Trevor Story. And don't. Make sure that you include him in your Red Sox stacks. Reese McGuire, Pablo Reyes, mix and match options from the bottom of the lineup. Dodgers side of things going up against Cutter Crawford. Doesn't really project well. 6,600, 7,000. 96 innings in 16 starts. 24.1% strikeouts is very good. A 3.66 ERA, but a 4+ xFIP. 6 innings last time out, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, a homer, an earned run to 22 Yankees hitters. Only 3 1/3 and 4 2/3 in the games before that. Just kind of an is what he is type option. Given that he doesn't project out well, given that it's the Dodgers on the other side and a very deep slate, I think we're just finding value elsewhere. If he puts up an okay game, I wouldn't be shocked, but I don't think he's got slate winning ceiling in him. Not in this matchup, not in this slate. Home runs at 3.85% on 34.1% hard hits, which is good, but 9% barrels, which is high. 87.5 miles an hour of exit velo, if you want to use that as a tiebreaker, is still pretty good. There are strikeouts there, but not a high strikeout opponent. Tons of power, all their quality. I don't really love the opportunity to roster Cutter Crawford here. Dodgers are very similar to the Red Sox in that, like, look at all these guys with absurdly low strikeout rates. And then a couple just premium power bats. Max Muncy, 26.7% strikeouts, but 15.8% walks and 29 home runs. 115 WRC plus, 271 ISO. Another guy, just a 3 true outcomes hitter. That's all we care about for DFS. I will take my shares of Max Muncy at 5,000, 3,500 in this matchup. Will Smith, ignore the FanDuel price. He's not a pitcher, obviously. Forgot to fix that. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, tons of value in the top spots. They're super, super expensive, but obviously well worth it. 2 leading candidates for the National League MVP awards. Basically those two and Ronnie Acuna. They're both outstanding. 310, 405, 605, and 336, 412, 576. Just the best top 2 hitters in baseball, probably. Best top 2, because you get only Acuna when on Acuna's team. But he's followed by probably the deepest lineup in baseball with when Albies comes back, which we'll talk about in a second, and Austin Riley and Matt Olson and all their quality. 2 very, very good baseball teams. Going down the Dodgers lineup, you get the version of the lineup with Peralta, Jason Hayward, and James Outman. All 3 lefties are in play. I really like having those 3 left-handed outfielders to mix and match for a variety of prices. You can use the prices to just kind of straight line your choices, or you can make some different choices. You can say, all right, I've got the 3,500 for Outman, but I've used Outman twice, and he'll probably be more popular than a $2,800 Jason Hayward. So let me put Hayward in, even though I've got the 3,500 to spend. Maybe you spend it, you upgrade a different position, you upgrade your pitcher in that lineup, or maybe you just leave it on the table as a differentiator. Leave a few $100 on the table. I think there's a lot of good ways to use those players as capable home run hitters, good left-handed bats who create runs, who have a little bit of speed on the base pass, who put the ball in play very effectively. I like those 3 guys to kind of shake up Dodgers stacks. They combine very well. Any one of those 3 guys in combination with any of their top 4 hitters is a good choice. So I like the way the Dodgers lineup goes together. Crawford, probably enough upside to believe that they'll get to him here. So what are the run totals? This game had a 10. Highest run total on the board, 5.25 for the Dodgers, 4.85 or 4.86 for the Red Sox. A lot of runs on the board in Boston tonight. So I would go Dodgers bats, Red Sox bats. Lance Lynn, but it's questionable at the pricing, given how he projects, given the hitting environment, the game environment today. Wouldn't totally stun me to see Lance Lynn go out, have a monster strikeout performance, and win the slate. Not totally shocking. That's in Lance Lynn's bag of tricks. So is going out there and giving up 3 home runs and getting lit up. So I'm leaning toward the Red Sox bats. Athletics, White Sox. We saw Dylan Cease up at the second spot on the pitching board. I think it's totally justified given the lousy Athletics on the other side here. But like we talked about, and I mentioned at the top of the show, we'll look at it in a second. Let's see who's in this lineup. Yeah, there's a lot of premium contact for these Athletics. This is a small sample, but really, Shea Langoliers, 395 plate appearances. Brent Rooker, 409. Seth Brown, 285. Also had a pretty good contact profile last year. Zach Geloff is a rookie, 150 plate appearances, though. He's up to 10 home runs now, 8 stolen bases, a 316 ISO, making very good contact over those 150. Ryan Noda making very good contact over his 355, still getting on base at a 380 clip. He strikes out at a 33.2% rate, but he walks 17.5% of the time. The Athletics are sneaky okay. Tony Kemp sucks in the 5 spot. I don't really get just not move, like just put Lawrence Butler there. It's not like Kemp is getting on base to reset the table for these guys. 305 on base over 347 plate appearances. 217, 305, 321. That's a waste of a spot, really, with Tony Kemp there. These two guys at the bottom, Jonah Bride, Nick Allen, kind of mix and match guys. But any of these guys with a contact profile, even Lawrence Butler included, 2,200 on both sides, outfield eligible, prospect bat, 1 home run already, 42 plate appearances. Not great so far, but decent contact so far for the prices. I do think you hedge any shares of Dylan Cease with some A's. He's a good pitcher, don't get me wrong. 4.50 ERA, 4.18 xFIP. That just is who he is on the runs, but 26.7% strikeouts. 10.3% walks is very high. He might put Ryan Noda on base ahead of Geloff, ahead of Brown and Rooker. That can be problematic for him, so that's where some of the runs come from. The premium contact is okay, but it's kind of mixed. 6.6% barrels, but a 42% hard hit rate, pushing almost 90 miles an hour of exit velo, but only a 2.3% home run rate. Possibly a little bit of luck baked in there. If we look over the years, similar last year, but he limited the hard hits. He limited the exit velo last year. The barrels were about the same. The home run rate was about the same, but it was reasonable last year. It made sense last year, where the contact profile this year, it doesn't really make sense that this is this low. He's just gotten lucky that when guys have squared it up with a lot of hard hit, a lot of exit velo, it's been on a lower launch angle, judging by the average launch versus the barrel rate and the home run rate. But in this year, it made a lot more sense. 31.2% hard hits, 86.8 miles an hour of exit velo. Year before, 2.82% home runs, kind of back up toward these numbers. 9.9% barrels, though. So, kind of a mixed bag of quality in terms of the premium contact. Does allow some runs. I think it supports some upside for the athletic side of things. Odd as it may seem, they're not entirely atrocious right now. They rank 16th on a 24-team slate by fantasy point projections, 13th by FanDuel point per dollar, and tied for fourth with the Pirates by DK point per dollar. 18th overall on the home run board, but probably a little bit more than that. So, interesting spot, given how cheap they are. Given some of the guys that have been delivering of late, like Zach Geloff. Given some of the guys that I actually believe in, like Seth Brown. Not that I don't actually believe in Zach Geloff. That was anticipatory for Brent Rooker coming up in the next in the lineup, who I fully do not believe in. I believe that the 22 home runs are somewhat real. His ceiling is going to be around 25. If he gets to 25, so be it. That was about where I put his ceiling back at the beginning of the season, and I continue to believe that's about where he is. It's not just because of the 31.3% strikeout rate, but it's because of how much he swings and misses at just all types of pitches. But he has supported a 231 ISO on the season, a 15.3% barrel rate, 48.1% hard hits, over 409 plate appearances. So while I don't fully believe in the hitter, while I think he's more this guy and this guy than he is this guy and this guy, I do think there's some justification for going to that play, for believing that there's a little bit of power against Dylan Cease here. Langoliers is like a very low-end catcher option, but he does have 15 home runs on the season, 11.3% barrel, 44% hard hits. So, yeah, there's some reason to believe in the A stack. So, but definitely going to have some Dylan Cease given how well he projects. 8,900, 9,400. The price is right on both sites. Very good option from the top of the board and not really priced like it. So Cease is my favorite side of this one, but I think it is justifiably a dual-sided situation. Zach Neal, not so much. 4,000, 5,600. Zach Neal went, what do we got here? 2 innings and 3 1/3 his last two, the full starts. Last time out, 1 strikeout, 1 walk, 5 earned in 3 1/3 versus Baltimore. Can't imagine we're getting much more than 4 innings out of Zach Neal here, and I don't really see the upside in going to the play, even at 4,000 on DK. You know, maybe it buys you a bat if you get 4 clean innings, but not a lot of upside. 12 innings pitched, 15.5% strikeouts, 6.9% walks, and 8.25 ERA, 8.62% home runs, 13.3% barrels. Obviously, some small sample stuff in here that's probably, 4 home runs over 12 innings, something like that. But not great. Not that really leads us to a ton of White Sox stacks. Lou Bob is obvious, 13.11 in the home run model, 34 on the season at 289 ISO, hit another one late last night. Luis Robert's a superstar, 14.7% barrels. There's no reason not to go to him as a one-off. He's a priority bat in stacks of White Sox, but they're pretty limited. Eloy Jimenez is another good option, good power bat in the heart of the lineup. Good triple slash for what he's been in the lineup, over 360 plate appearances. Very good premium contact, 14 home runs. He's my second highest priority in that lineup. I do believe that Moncada, Andrew Vaughn, Tim Anderson, and Andrew Benintendi are bolt-on parts. They're playable, but they've all been underperforming. These two guys have been flat bad all season. Moncada's been kind of bad as well, 232, 274, 348 in a limited 248 plate appearances, but he was also really bad last year. 433 plate appearances, 12 homers, a 76 WRC plus. He was good 2 years ago. 122 WRC plus, but good, not great. 263, 375. The on base was very good that year. The run creation was pretty good. Power was in the middle, but hasn't really ever fully delivered on the promise of what he was supposed to be when he came over and defected from Cuba. Andrew Vaughn does have mid-range power, 3,300, 2,900, 16 home runs on the season, a 172 ISO. Makes pretty good contact, 46.1% hard hits. There's at least believable power upside through these guys. These guys, if they can manage to make their way to first base, which 287 on base for Timmy, 12 stolen bases, 1 home run. I feel like if nothing else, you would think that he'd be occasionally stealing a base, even getting on at 287. Even on the rare instance that he's getting on, he's not running. He's had those 12 stolen bases pretty much all year. 1 home run. He's had that for weeks now, and it took him weeks to get it. Benintendi up to 4, 13 homers, 96 WRC plus. Wasted seasons for both those players. So it's Dylan Cease. I gotta put the White Sox on top of the Athletics. I can't. Do they rank that way? I don't think they do rank that way. No, they're bottom of the board. They're 12th by home run upside, just primarily because of Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez here. So they do have a little bit of power upside, but they rank bottom of the board by fantasy points and point per dollar on both sites. So I gotta go Athletics up top. I gotta go Dylan Cease. Oakland Athletics, as weird as that is. Minor shares of White Sox stacks. Not even really for value. Maybe some Luis Robert one-offs. Some Eloy Jimenez one-offs. Not great. Athletics are more interesting than the White Sox. Weird world. Shannon Lambert says Zach Geloff going to make a hell of a Dodger in the near future. That's just cruel. Larry C says Tank stock has been moving up as of the last week. Dotson won't be around late, though. I like Mims. I also like Dotson now that McLaurin is good. Yeah, Mims is on my list. Tarp on the field in Boston? Weather in Boston? All right, thanks for that, Stephen Leibowitz. I forgot to check the weather completely. A couple names dropped into the chat. Dimitri says, happy Mookie back at Fenway Day. Said that a little while ago. Stephen Leibowitz says, Crawford gets killed at home. Carter Crawford. Hadn't looked at the home roads for him, but, I mean, he hasn't really been outstanding in anywhere. He's okay. But especially facing the Dodgers, like, even if he wasn't getting killed at home, I don't know that I would throw this pitcher and these numbers into that Dodgers team. But he's only been okay overall anyway. So yeah, I'm with you. Let me look at the weather though. 4:09, making okay time. I don't know if I'm Ubering over to this draft or if I'm catching a ride with my buddy Asthma. Let's see. Bit held up at work, 5 to 6. Realistic, maybe 6:30-ish. Okay, so probably head over before that. Sorry, just funny picture of my niece from my mom. She's babysitting today, apparently. All right, weather. Things that matter for you guys. Looks like Boston's the real problematic one. The Angels at Mets is, if I had tickets, I'd be going. Let's put it that way. It's not a nice day here. It's like a cloudy, rainy day, but not really raining. And I don't think it's going to really start coming down. So I think we're okay in the New York game. Philly probably pretty similar. Roth doesn't love Baltimore. He doesn't love Philly. Colorado at Baltimore. He says the game will play regardless for Colorado at Baltimore. It seems like the only more dangerous spot is that Red Sox game, which is obviously an important game given the offense in it. Wind's blowing out to left. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, keep an eye on that Red Sox game. Good call out there. I appreciate that. Vic says 30% rain at 6, so drizzle through the whole game. All right, that seems okay. As long as it plays, that's all we care about. As long as they don't postpone it. Where were we? We were here, right? Yeah, we just talked through that one. So this Angels and Mets game that we were just kind of referring to. So like I said, rainy day, but nice enough. And I like the spot for Kodai Senga, but I also like the spot for some Angels power. A lot of it obviously supported by Shohei Ohtani, close to doubling up the magic number, despite Senga honestly not giving up all that much premium contact, not giving all that much power. He's got that nasty ghost forkball that just dies in the dirt that's just difficult to elevate anyway. So 5.8% barrels, 88.1 miles an hour of exit velo, only a 2.19% home run rate. He's got a 3.19 ERA and a 3.81 xFIP, which are honestly spectacular for a guy with an 11.1% walk rate. Walks way too many when guys are patient on that forkball. It tends to induce some walks, but when he's on, he's on. And that pitch has one of the highest swinging strike rates in all of baseball against any pitch, if not the highest. It was like him and Spencer Strider's fastball. Just ridiculous pitch. So he's been very effective with it. 12.5% swinging strike rate, 28.1% strikeout rate overall. I like the option for Senga. He projects out near the top of the board, 9,600, 10-9. He's not entirely safe, but I think he's got more than enough talent to pitch through this lineup, get through Shohei Ohtani a couple of times, and we're in business against some of these higher strikeout power hitters in this lineup. I do think you double up and go to a both-sided scenario against the Angels here. Nolan Shanuel, we've talked about a couple times. Very cheap still, $3,000, $2,700. The best spot for correlated scoring in baseball ahead of Shohei Ohtani. No idea what to expect from Ohtani. I assume if they're rolling him out there, there's no possibility he's going to hurt himself further. We've seen guys play through UCLs before. We've seen guys pitch through UCLs before, like Tanaka. So no idea what to expect. If he's in the lineup, I got to go with the numbers, 6,700, 4,400. You're obviously paying for a dented version of it. It's a dented can version of Shohei Ohtani today. We don't really know what to expect. 44 home runs, 17 stolen bases, a 181 WRC plus. I think if you're going to Angels, you obviously put them in and you take your shots. Brandon Drury, Mike Moustakas, Logan O'Hoppe, Hunter Renfroe, Mickey Moniak, and even Randall Grichuk and Luis Renifo, honestly, have decent power. Everybody in that group has some power. Drury's got more. Renfro has the most overall power. 18 homers on the season, ties with Drury at 18 home runs. Renfroe should have more home runs than this year. Kind of a down year for him overall. We were waiting for him to hit number 18 for a long, long time. We were also waiting for number 17 for a long time. But a premier right-handed power hitter. Drury is a very good right-handed power hitter. Moustakas is a pretty good lefty power hitter at this point. 12 home runs, a 180 ISO, and a bounce-back year and 313 plate appearances. Renifo is more of like a mix and match. Surprise, he hit a home run and he's low-owned kind of a guy. Moniak had good power output from the left side with 12 home runs early. Has kind of cooled at the plate, but does have lefty pop. Logan O'Hoppe, 2,900, 2,700. 5 home runs in just 77 plate appearances, a 243 ISO, very good contact profile. Came into the season expecting to be a power hitting catcher. So I do think there's upside for the Angels stack. I think it runs pretty deep. This is a 1 through 9 playable lineup. There's not a hitter in that lineup that I wouldn't include in some version of a stack of Angels. They're pretty cheap. They are the 4th projected team, 2nd on FanDuel, 1st on DK by points per dollar, and the 1st overall home run team. But again, some of that is supported by the fact that Ohtani is pulling a double of any of these guys and almost twice the magic number. Difficult spot. Could be a big success for Kodai Senga. Could be a big success for the Angels. They could collide with one another and have limited results on both sides. But I think this is a spot that demands coverage on both sides. A little bit of Senga, a little bit of Angel stacks. On the other side, the Mets, I think you can take your shots with the Mets against Patrick Sandoval here. Relatively good pitcher in terms of limiting premium contact, limiting home runs. Over the last few seasons, not that much in terms of home runs, not that much in terms of barrels, not that much in terms of hard hits or exit velo by any means. Launch angle is pretty restricted. So he's good at keeping the ball in the yard, but the Mets do have some premium home run hitters in the form of Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Francisco Alvarez. Depends on who's in this lineup. Oh, we did get the confirmed. Fantastic. Oops. So the Mets are typically playable in their usual form. Like there's no real difference today from the Mets as compared to how they typically look. A little bit more limited in terms of the home runs. Pete Alonso would be out a little further against some guys who are not quite as good at limiting home runs historically. So would Lindor. But a lot of these guys fall in this, mid-range anyway. Alvarez has cooled a lot after hitting his 21 home runs. He's down to 216, 285, 445. Tremendous any given slate upside, but against a guy who's already decent at limiting home runs. I question what the upside is for even Francisco Alvarez in this one. Weak back end with DJ Stewart, but he's been making pretty good lefty contact, 81 plate appearances, 6 home runs. So maybe an okay final point for your stacks. Then you get to Danny Mendick, Jonathan Aruz, and Tim LeCastro. Mix and match, very low quality options. All 3 players below the Mendoza line in very limited samples. Pretty weak. A little bit of speed. LeCastro's got a lot of speed. If he manages to put the ball in play, he might leg out a double. If he manages to get on, he might steal a base, but very limited options. It limits my interest in the Mets if I don't really want to go much further than here. Like I want these 2 guys a little bit. If I'm building 10 Mets stacks, they're in a handful of them each. These guys are the priorities. And I don't even really like Jeff McNeil that much. So it's really a 3-man. It's Nimmo, Lindor, and Pete Alonso, who do come pretty cheap as a 3-man on the DK slate, which could have its own value. 3,100, 38, 39 on the FanDuel slate, a little relatively more expensive. I don't love it for the Mets. Not that gives me all that much faith in Sandoval. He does project out okay. 28.8, that's a pretty good FanDuel projection. 7,200, that puts him in play on the DK slate, particularly given the weak back end for this Mets lineup. A little bit of upside for Sandoval here. 4.08 ERA, 4.43 xFIP. Walking too many at 10.6%. Doesn't strike out enough at 19.6. But if he gives you 6 innings, keeps the Mets off the home run board, there's potential there. Limited play. I don't know how much I go to it at 86 on the FanDuel slate. Even with a decent projection, it's pretty deep on the FanDuel board today. 72, I do think he's in that SP2 mid-range type mix. Kodai Senga, Angels bats, Patrick Sandoval, Mets bats. 4 corners at least loosely in play. Senga and the Angels bats much higher priorities than Sandoval or the Mets bats though. Pods, Brewers. Neither lineup in on this one. Interesting pitching matchup here. Brandon Woodruff has made 3 starts back, 5 innings, 6 1/3, 5 1/3. 9 strikeouts, 5 strikeouts, 4 strikeouts, diminishing returns there. 2 home runs, 1 home run, 2 home runs against Pittsburgh, at the White Sox, and at Texas. I think you can forgive the Texas start a little bit since they're just really, really good. But the home run power has been a little bit of a concern. The strikeouts are somewhat there. The innings pitched are there, so that's encouraging. Against the Padres, top-heavy team, he projects out pretty well. I think he's on the board, 10-4, 10,000, but maybe a little bit more tempered expectations compared to some of the similarly projected guys, including Yu Darvish at 8,500, 9,100, who projects out almost exactly the same for cheaper prices in what I would call a better matchup. So I actually like the Darvish side of this a little bit better. He projects out by 1/100 of a point better, but at a much lower salary. Very good price for him on DK. You could arguably get away with some, if you're going to some cheap bats, some value bats, you could go Darvish and another high-end pitcher on the DK slate. It's expensive, but I think it's potentially there. 91 on FanDuel, very, very playable over there. One of my favorite options actually over there. 24.9% strikeout rate, a 4.35 ERA, a 3.90 xFIP on the season. Limited barrels, limited hard hits, limited exit velo, 3% home runs. Pitching, mostly like you, Darvish. Strikeouts are down somewhat. 25.6 last year, 24.9 this year. Down a lot from 2 years ago. But he's pitching a lot like this version of you, Darvish, who was very effective last year. Walks are up a little bit. xFIP's up a little bit. Swinging strikes are down a little bit. But we're nitpicking for a pitcher who's reaching the back end of the career. Still pitching effectively. I think there's a pretty good upside for you, Darvish, in this spot. I don't know what his popularity is going to look like. He doesn't tend to get too much popularity on a lot of slates, though. And on a deep one like this, I can't imagine he's going to get overwhelmed with ownership. The Brewers side, they probably project out okay for some value. Let's see, they rank 9th on the DK slate for points per dollar, 16th on FanDuel points per dollar, 15th by overall fantasy points and home runs. There are some capable bats in the Brewers lineup, but it just seems like a spot that more, if Darvish doesn't have a great start, it falls more into the middle. The number of times you roll this slate and they completely obliterate you, Darvish, probably fairly limited. Christian Yelich, priority bat if you're going to Brewers. Capable one-off play, but he's expensive at 3,900 on the FanDuel slate. 53 on DK, that's still a discount for Christian Yelich. 16 home runs, 27 steals, 24% better than average creating runs. William Contreras, another one of the more valuable catchers in DFS, just given the spot in the lineup every day. Hits second pretty much every day. And a good bat, 47.8% hard hits, 275, 352, 449 off the top, 118 WRC plus, and gains plate appearances by virtue of hitting second. Carlos Santana, Willy Adames, Mark Canha, some capable veteran bats here. A little bit of power for each of those guys. Adames, the most flawed of the hitters, but probably the one with the most overall power. 21 home runs on this season, a 186 ISO. Santana's been good since rejoining the Brewers, 18 home runs. 7 home runs for Mark Canha. Rowdy Tellez back in the lineup at 2,200, still extremely cheap on the DK slate. 295 plate appearances this year for Rowdy. He's got 12 home runs. 210, 288, 382. Nobody wants to pay for that, but 12 home runs. Mediocre contact profile was much, much better for contact last year in a full sample. Last year, he hit 35 home runs. 242 ISO. This guy should not be as cheap as 2,200 on this slate. The contact was going to be bad no matter what, the triple slash rather. This isn't much better than what he's done this year in terms of the triple slash. He's been limited by being under 300 plate appearances, but he does have 12 home runs. The ISO's way down, the premium contact's way down, but it's still a very, very high-end left-handed bat lurking in this lineup for very cheap in terms of power upside. So Rowdy's interesting if he's hitting down there. Monasterio, 94 WRC plus. He's cooled a lot. He was one of the guys at the bottom of the lineup that was above average for run creation, despite being kind of mediocre. He's dipped below that now. Bryce Turang, probably the best out of these three options for some counting stats. 6 home runs, 17 steals, but only a 70 WRC plus. Tyrone Taylor does have a little bit of odd right-handed power. 2,300 across sights in the outfield. Middling kind of an option. The pod side of things going up against Woodruff, probably some upside for them, especially if you get the idea that they chase Woodruff. Maybe the innings are still not much beyond 5 or 6, and they put a few runs on him so he comes out of the game early. The Brewers do have a pretty decent bullpen. Ha-Sung Kim off the top, basically turning himself into a star, or at least a star for correlation. 368 on base, 128 WRC plus, 17 homers, 28 steals, ahead of 4 excellent options in Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Manny Machado, and Xander Bogaerts. Bogey back down to 263, 335, 397, but still a 105 WRC plus. He's managed to keep that above water. 14 home runs, 13 steals. Down bottom of the lineup, Trent Grisham with 12 homers, 12 steals. Gary Sanchez with 16 home runs and only 235 plate appearances. I know it's a more valued position, 3,800 for Gary Sanchez at catcher. If you compare Gary's numbers over 235 to Tellez's home run output, this isn't a fair comparison. Gary's a better power hitter. I was going to try and stretch that, but I forgot that Tellez just wasn't making good contact. Never mind. Tellez is still a good, cheap source of lefty power, though. Garrett Cooper, sneaky bat late in the lineup, 2,700, 2,500, 14 home runs. Most of them came while with Miami, but a interesting enough right-handed power hitter if he's late in the lineup. People have not been going to Garrett Cooper that much in Stacks of Padres, at least on FanDuel lately. Jake Cronenworth, mix and match kind of guy, first base, second base, eligible on both sites. Your obvious quality is here. Those are your high price guys. Hassan Kim bolts right into those guys. I like Gary a lot from late in the lineup. So, Darvish, Woodruff, Padres, Brewers, and the Brewers kind of only on the board really for some points per dollar on DK. Don't love the option across the board overall. San Diego does rank out well. 6th overall by projections, 4th by FanDuel value, 16th by DK value, though, given the high prices there, and then 4th by home run potential, just given the ridiculous amount of talent right here. You can see nobody above 10 technically, but they average out well because there's a lot of nines and 8s in amongst these couple lower guys. So Padres favored over the Brewers bats-wise, Darvish favored over Woodruff pitchers-wise. B-Funk says, my first computer was a 186 megahertz processor in 1988 with floppy disks. Love it. Anthony Taylor, no. College football is going to be a no, at least for right now. Maybe, next year if we continue on, we get ramped up. Who knows what's going on? Maybe we've got somebody doing college football, but that's a big blind spot for me. Don't have the bandwidth for college sports, unfortunately. Maybe come tournament time for basketball, we'll obviously talk tournament and bracket and stuff like that, and just for fun when we can dive into it. But ongoing college sports and college football is just not my wheelhouse. I would say Matt Kajeski, I think still with Stochastic is the guy to listen to for that, though. Wouldn't even want to try to compete with Matt Kajeski in that space. Poe Degen says the world needs THC infused Kool-Aid. I'll second that. Larry C's caught up now. Could be Travis has a big ass joint rolled for the car ride home. Sounds good. Drive safe, but sounds good. Twins, Sonny Gray. Rangers, Dane Dunning. I like both pitchers. They both kind of project in the middle of the board. They're both part of that plateau. Obviously, different prices for both of these pitchers. I do think Dunning's got some sneaky strikeout upside. 18.7% on the season. Not a dominant strikeout pitcher by any means, but he spiked a couple upside games already this year. 10 strikeouts, 11 strikeouts, and 12 strikeouts against Detroit, against the White Sox, and against the Giants. The Twins are right on that list of teams that are very much like that with a lot of strikeouts. 29.3% strikeout rate for this projected Twins lineup. Let's see if we got the confirm. We do. It's probably going to be in that same range. So it could be another one of those sneaky K nights for Dunning. The one hesitation I have in saying like, hey, let's grab a bunch of shares of Dunning is that on each of those other nights where he hit those high strikeout totals, he projected really well. He projected better than what he's pulling tonight. So he is on the board. He's very, very affordable. And this is a perfectly fine projection for these prices. I just don't know where the ceiling is. I don't know. I mean, the model doesn't know the future, obviously, but for whatever reason, he doesn't crack like that 30-point FanDuel projection tonight. He doesn't crack that upper part of the board. So a little bit more hesitation than in those other spots where I was like, fire away with Dane Dunning. This one's a little bit more hesitation, but I do like the spot. I do think there's tons of strikeout potential. 28.1% strikeout rate for that confirmed Twins lineup. 42.8% down here for Joey Gallo, who I still love. 20 home runs, 267 ISO. Another 3 true outcomes guy, 14.4% walks to go with his 42.4% strikeout rate. But this is by far the highest strikeout rate in baseball for hitters with more than 300 plate appearances. I haven't checked that, but I would bet a lot on it. And there's a lot of strikeouts up and down. A lot of strikeouts for some of their key hitters. Oddly, Max Kepler is the best at avoiding strikeouts in this entire lineup. Max has 20 home runs from the left side at 228 ISO. Definite power threat to Dane Dunning in the heart of the lineup, but he's not terrible for home runs. 7.5% barrels, 9.8 degree average launch, 2.59% home run rate. Last year, 5.4 degree average launch. Year before, 6.8 degree average launch. Also good at limiting home runs those years. So he keeps the ball down. That's just part of his game plan overall. Even when he's not finding his strikeouts, he's usually good at keeping the ball in the yard. Does pitch fairly deep, 132 2/3. There's a couple bullpen appearances in there. 19 starts, though. Giving us pretty good depth, giving us pretty good innings. I don't dislike Dunning for the price. On the Twins side, Sonny Gray projects out better than Dunning on the other side. You're paying more for him, and he's going up against a much more dangerous lineup in the Texas Rangers. There is some potential for Sonny Gray to succeed. 24.7% strikeout rate this year, a 3.15 ERA, a 3.67 xFIP. The .084 home run rate can't go unacknowledged here. That is spectacular. He's allowed 5 home runs all season. He's got 10 straight starts pitching into the 6th inning or beyond, which is key for Sonny Gray. 143 innings and 25 starts. He's been really good for depth, really good for chasing bonuses. Just good overall this season. Very good season from Sonny Gray. Does that mean I want to throw him into the buzzsaw that is the Rangers lineup? Not necessarily. I think he's definitely warranting at least a handful of shares. I imagine he will be one of the lower owned guys from the, call it upper middle and beyond on the board projection wise. So if he falls below if he falls to fairly low ownership on either side, I do think it's worth getting over the field. He's got the potential to shut this Rangers team down. Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Nathaniel Lowe, Adolis Garcia, they're going to have something to say about being shut down, though. Tons and tons of power in that group. Some good speed with a couple of those guys. Some very good on-base skills. Tons and tons of run creation for all those guys. They're obviously some of the best options in regular baseball, in fantasy baseball, season-long, DFS, whatever you want to get into. If you're looking for home run upside, there's a little bit here in Corey Seager, a little bit around the Adolis Garcia, maybe the 2 catchers, a little bit of pop, sneaky late in the lineup. Marcus Semien can take anybody deep. Hasn't really been focused too much on power this year. Does have 20 home runs and 13 steals. It's not like he's not trying to hit home runs. But a little bit more focused like toward the 348 on base, limiting strikeouts to just 14.2%, putting the ball in play, getting himself on ahead of the ridiculous core of options here. So really good season out of Semien, and his price is down a little bit, down to 59 on DK. That's down by a couple $100. 37 on FanDuel, down by a couple $100. It's helpful in stacking Rangers. I do think you can go to Rangers here. So I want one or both of these guys. One or the other of these guys. Well, one or both of these guys plus this guy. Or you could say 2 of those 3 guys. If not all 3, if you can figure out how to afford it. And then it's tricky because Nathaniel Lowe is really good. Direct correlation with those guys. Capable on his own. 4,600, 3,400 is a good price at first base. We've also got Garvey. We've also got Jonah Heim down here as your mix and match catcher options for even cheaper. They've got a little bit more power overall, I think, than Nathaniel Lowe does. Better premium contact marks. So you get those guys a little bit cheaper, might be a little bit lower owned later in the lineup. DK, you probably get some ownership around them just because of the catcher of it all. But some interesting decision points through the construction with this lineup. Leo Taveras and Ezekiel Duran, very good options late in the lineup. Travis Jankowski's got a little bit of hit tool, a little bit of speed to work with. Very good lineup up and down. Twin side of things, you do have all those strikeouts, but you've got some capable guys. Mid-range power marks for everybody in the lineup, but limited. Joey Gallo only at 6.64. Max Kepler only at 6.99. Edward Julian, 6.57. Any one of those guys is a capable enough option. Any of those guys together in a stack is fine, although they're separated by a lot of spots in the lineup. But Dunning does have that ability to check power. So a little bit concerning from that perspective. But Julian's a priority. Second base, 3,700, 2,900. Good season from him. 287, 379, 473. 138 WRC plus with 10 homers in 278 plate appearances. Polanco's got power. Missed most of the season, but does have 8 home runs in 226 opportunities. Carlos Correa has been bad this season, but down to 4,400, 3,000. Continue taking my shots. He does have 15 home runs, 5% worse than average creating runs. Kepler's in play. Royce Lewis is in play, 4,000, 2,900 in the infield. Pretty cheap. 328, 368, 512 on the season in 133 plate appearances. Capable enough for a guy with some prospect pedigree. Matt Wallner's been one of their better power hitters. 9 home runs in his 138 plate appearances. Excellent contact profile in a small sample. Jeffers has power behind the plate. Joey Gallo's got obvious power, but a lot of flaws. Still tremendous contact when he does manage to connect. And then Donovan Solano, an interesting hitter to find 9th. He actually is in a fairly effective wraparound play. He's not a speed guy by any means, but a 280 average, 368 on base. Strikes out a little bit, but draws some walks. Puts the ball in play with, a fairly effective hard hit rate. So I actually kind of like Donovan Solano wrapping back around to the top from down there. It's an interesting Twins lineup. There's a lot of multi-position guys for cheap prices. I just don't love the matchup against Dunning. I prefer the Dunning side a little bit. Think he could be a little sneaky here. So I'll go, where do the Rangers rank out? Rangers were 7th by projections, 12th and 13th by value, FanDuel and DK, and 10th by home runs, huh? I'll go Sonny Gray, Rangers bat. Screw it. Sonny Gray, Dane Dunning. Let's give Dane Dunning the ceiling that he deserves. Sonny Gray, Dane Dunning, Rangers, Twins. Not that it actually matters. Twins bat's easily the lowest end part of it. Between the strikeout potential for Dunning and the ability to keep the ball down. The more I talk about it, the more I'm going to jinx him, and he's going to give up 3 home runs today. How it happens sometimes, like when we talk about Fromber and his amazing ability to limit home runs, and then he goes out and gives up 2 home runs. But I do think there's upside for Dunning here. Let's keep on rolling. 3 games to go. We are making time. No, we're not. It's 4:36. Felt like we were going fast. Larry says, Terry, with baseball night, have you been playing Immaculate Grid yet? That's my routine on lunch now. I tell you what, that would totally be my routine if I had like regular lunch hour, and this is like what soaks up that like brain power for me is just jumping in and doing all of this like as my job. And I tend to I'll take my break more in the morning before I get started, like sleep in a little bit, and then it's just like plow through, get through the shows, and then it's just like unwind time. So I haven't had that I have a good space to drop something like that into where I just need a quick little use of time, but it seems really cool. I really like the concept. I'm aware of what it is. I've played it a couple of times. Not to great success. I'm actually kind of bad with trivia sometimes. It's weird. I have a gigantic collection of stuff up in here, but I'm not great at immediately sometimes like reaching into the filing cabinet and pulling it out. This is a long-standing conversation that I've had with a buddy of mine, my friend Dan, who is one of the smartest people I've ever met. Really, really bright guy, and has this amazing memory, just ability to just be like, oh yeah, back, we're that road trip we took in June, and you were wearing this hat, and we went here and we had lunch there, and it's like, how the hell do you remember that? And for me, it's like there's just a whirlwind going around in there, and everything's in it, like in a tornado when it picks up like desks and furniture and papers and dirt and your dog and all of that stuff, and you're blowing around on the inside of the tornado. You can stick your hand in the tornado and try and grab what you're looking for. You might or might not come out with it, where his brain is just like, no, he describes it to me. It's just like, no, mine's like a filing cabinet. Like I just open it up and it's like, all right, the June 10th file from the year 2000. Let's check it out, figure out what's in there. So it's just really weird. But yeah, so that's why I'm not necessarily great for Immaculate Grid, but I would definitely play it and have some fun with it. And that is why we don't make good time on this show. Hunter Green, Brandon Pfaadt. Brandon Pfaadt, a little bit better of late. Projects out okay. Don't love the matchup for him. There's tons of strikeouts in the Reds lineup. Feeding a little bit of upside to him. 5,600. He's very, 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 very cheap on DK. I do think for the DK value price, Brandon Pfaadt is probably an interesting option tonight. Not great. 20.5% strikeout rate on the season, a 6.13 ERA, but a 4.72 xFIP. Again, a 4.72 xFIP is not good, but it's substantially better than a 6.13 ERA. 5.22% home run rate, not good at all. 10.9% barrels, not good at all. 90.5 miles an hour of exit velo. What did I say before? 90 plus is a problem. 44.8% hard hits is a problem. 18 degrees of average launch is a problem. Or not a problem, but it means that he can't be making those contact mistakes. Last 2, 7 innings, 5 2/3 innings, 5 strikeouts in 7 against San Diego the last time out, 8 strikeouts in 5 2/3 against the same San Diego team in Arizona the start before that. So improving a little bit in the second half. Did pitch well against a pretty good Padres team twice. Little bit of upside given the strikeouts and the very, very low price. It's a bargain bin play. It's a value dart, whatever you want to call it. But I do think some fat shares, especially on the DK slate, are justified here. FanDuel, I don't know if I go crazy with it. I don't know what kind of a shot he's got at the quality start. And odds are he does go bust. So SP2 value dart DK, much, much more in play on the fat side of things. Hunter Green, second start back. Went 3, but faced 24 hitters. Struck out 4, walked 3, gave up 5 home runs and 8 earned runs on 10 hits against Toronto in a total mess. The fact that he faced that many hitters, struck out a handful, walked a handful, obviously was allowed to continue pitching despite it not being good. Only made it through 3 innings despite all the with all the chaos, but did face 24 hitters. There's got to be at least a little bit of pitch count there, but I think it's kind of a flawed option, especially going up against the Diamondbacks, especially because he cost 8,900. I don't love where that projection's at. I don't really believe in it. He's a very talented young pitcher, 4.72 ERA and a 4.09 xFIP, a 30.4% strikeout rate over his 76 and a third innings, 15 starts, most of which came in the beginning of the year. But even then, he was allowing a lot of premium contact, 4.09% home runs, 91.2 miles an hour with exit velo, 10.5% barrels, 46% plus hard hits on pushing almost 20 degrees of average launch. Problematic for home runs against a team that knows how to hit home runs. Has 3 guys in the home run model above the magic number. Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, 13.37, 11.46, 13.07. It's a pretty good source of power on the Diamondback side of things. How did the Padres average out higher than the Diamondbacks in the power index? They're ranked third. Third behind the Angels and the Dodgers. Okay, the Padres ranked up better by projections than by home run upside. So Diamondbacks 9th by projections, 6th by FanDuel ranking, FanDuel value, 8th by DK points per dollar, 3rd by home run marks. Kind of like the spot for the D-backs today. Carroll's a star, hit his 22nd home run, got off the schneid a little bit last night with a good game, 131 WRC+, had been backsliding a little bit, but still obviously tremendously talented multi-category scorer. Ketel Marte, dynamite option at second base, obviously above the home run mark, 20 home runs on the season, a 201 ISO, 122 WRC+. Neither of those guys strike out above 20%. Ketel Marte, 16.6%, also draws walks. Everybody in this lineup limits strikeouts and draws a lot of walks, even down toward the bottom of the lineup. Like Geraldo Perdomo, 16.4% strikeouts, 12.6% walks. Limited power, 13 steals, but a 369 on base, 112 WRC plus over 390 plate appearances. Jace Peterson, mediocre in terms of the strikeout rate at 24%, but 11.4% walks, gets on at a 311 clip. Not really good enough in terms of the on base, but a little bit of lefty pop. And the idea that he could draw you a walk, get himself involved to correlate with some of these other guys, just in case he doesn't drive the ball at all for you for a very cheap price in limited shares. There's a little bit of potential there. So just to illustrate that they have the opportunity to limit the strikeouts for Hunter Green in the time that he's in the game and exploit the high walk rate, I think it's a good stack on the Diamondback side of things. Favorite bats in there would be Corbin Carroll. It's the 3 guys over the home run mark. All right, 1, 2, 3. And then I really like both Lourdes Gurriel and Tommy Pham as bolt-on parts, so that's kind of a straight liner right through there. But I do like Geraldo Perdomo as a wraparound. There's a little value in Alek Thomas. If you get Moreno in here as a catcher, that's a catcher boost over Jose Herrera. Good Diamondbacks lineup up and down. Limits the opportunity even if you did have innings on Hunter Green. What's his pitch count look like across town? I think they had it pretty high too. Let me see. Bear with me one sec. Yeah, they got him. They got him similar. They've got him at a full-blown start. So maybe the projection's right. The right day, he could easily hit that if he's getting the full 5-6 inning treatment, which seems somewhat likely anyway. or at least as far as other fantasy sites seem to think. Tough to put him really on the board, though. The pricing, kind of a lack of belief in only a second start back, a precious arm. I don't know. I don't love the Hunter Green side of this thing. Diamondbacks bats. I didn't talk about the Reds against Brandon Pfaadt, which I do think is very, very playable. Like I said, Pfaadt on the board as a extreme value dart on the DK slate, based mostly on price, a little bit on some strikeout upside, but he's not been good. He's been very, very targetable this year. 5.22% home runs, 10.9% barrels. I think you can throw bats like Matt McClain, Ellie De La Cruz, Spencer Steer, Christian Encarnacion Strand from the middle of the lineup. Throw those bats at Brandon Pfaadt for sure, especially if you roster Brandon Pfaadt. You definitely want to take some Reds bats as a hedge. 5 guys in that lineup with dual position eligibility on the FanDuel slate makes them really dynamic. They're all really affordable, so there's a lot of easy to get to parts. TJ Friedl at the top of the lineup gives you a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed, decent on base skills to correlate directly with McClain and De La Cruz. Spencer Steer, 5,000, 3,100. Cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DK, but easy to get to. Third base and outfield on DK, first base and outfield on FanDuel. 18 homers, 11 steals, a 116 WRC plus on the season. Noelvi Marte, Will Benson. Will Benson's been really good from the bottom of the lineup. Sneaky option. 7 home runs, 14 steals, a 129 WRC plus, and 239 plate appearances. Making not great, but sturdy contact for 3,528 in the outfield. I like that option. So it would be Diamondbacks bats, Reds bats, Brandon Pfaadt value darts, very limited shares of Hunter Green from the mid board. Just given that he's priced like those mid guys, where is he? He's here. I mean, he's priced like all these guys for the most part, except for Woodruff. He's priced the same as most of these guys. Projects the same as most of these guys. Difficult matchup, low strikeout matchup. The right day he comes out and has a good game, but I find this one tough to trust. Tougher to trust than a lot of these. Yeah. I'm going to keep that one somewhat limited. I don't want to get burnt by him coming out and striking out 10 and dominating this slate, but I think that's few and far between. If we roll this 100 times, that happens 4 or 5 times. Royals and the Mariners. Bryce Miller, Brady Singer. Interesting spot for Brady Singer lovers. 19.7% strikeout rate this year, a 5.04 ERA, but a much better 4.24 xFIP. Only 2.48% home runs on a 9.6 degree average launch, 7.6% barrels. Was really struggling earlier, kind of pulled things together a little bit in some recent starts, a little bit better over the second half, but really questionable overall. Last time out was a short start, 3 strikeouts, 2 walks, 2 home runs, 4 earned, 9 hits in 3 2/3 at Chicago. Had been better in a few starts before that. Still cheap at 6,900 on DK, 84 probably about right for him on the FanDuel slate in this matchup. The reason that I think it's somewhat interesting is there are still a fair amount of strikeouts on the board in that Mariners lineup, and I expect he'll be really low owned for a guy who's priced like this on this kind of a slate. A playable enough value dart. Value dart on DK is an SP2. Mid-range dart on FanDuel. Very low expectations, though. The Mariners have been rolling. They've been much, much better in the second half. You're just chasing some strikeout potential in kind of a danger spot. So if I did have any Singer, I would definitely take some hedge position with Mariners, and I kind of prefer the Mariners bats side of that coin. Bryce Miller on the other side projects out pretty well. 8,600, 8,800, fair mid-range price. Correct pricing for how he projects on this slate. Has been very, very good over the course of the season. 18 starts, 97 2/3, 22.8% strikeouts, only walks 5.1%, fits right in with the team theme of mid-range strikeouts, good walk rates, low whip. 3.78 ERA, 4.38 on the xFIP, 11.5% swinging strikes, only a 1.01 whip, a little bit of premium contact, fly ball oriented pitcher, 10.8% barrels, 42.8% hard hits, 91.5 miles an hour of exit velo is too much, 3.33% home run rate on 19.4 degrees, so when he makes mistakes, they're going to be loud and long. Kansas City on the other side, not the greatest group in the world to capitalize on that. You do have Bobby Witt, you do have Sal Perez, to a lesser extent, MJ Melendez and Michael Massey from the left side. but not a ton of really good home run hitters here. So I kind of like the Bryce Miller spot. Pitcher's Park, not the easiest park to homer in. Supports the upside for Miller. So I think he's on the board for tournaments. I think 86, 88 is the right price. You can take a little bit of a position when Royals bats. It would be the guys that I mentioned, really. Michael Garcia is an okay starting point, given that he's got an okay hit tool. Doesn't get on base at a crazy good rate. 19 steals, only a 90 WRC+. Doesn't really walk. Doesn't strike out a ton. Just kind of an okay option because he hits ahead of Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt, 26 homers, 37 steals. Obviously a tremendous player. Excellent shortstop option on any given slate. Massey, a little bit of left-handed pop. 10 home runs, but only a 136 ISO. Decent hard hit rate, the okay barrel rate. Sal Perez, down year, but only cost 4,200, 2,600, particularly where catchers are needed. That's a little bit interesting anyway. 19 homers, a 173 ISO, only 90 WRC plus though. MJ, tons of contact, left side of the plate, limited results, as always. Bottom of the lineup gets weak. I think Nelson Velasquez is a somewhat interesting power play. 7 home runs, a 359 ISO, and only 68 plate appearances. Tremendous contact in the small sample. 7.74 in the home run model. A little bit of power upside there for sure. Drew Waters, Matt Beattie, Kyle Isbell. Kind of a weak bottom end. Bryce Miller, Mariners bats. Brady Singer, just darts, very limited shares of darts. Royals, just darts, very, very limited, minor hedge position. I like to hedge with more realistic options. I don't love the opportunity for the Royals to go out and destroy Bryce Miller tonight. They might ruin his DFS night, but do they become a great stack for it? I see very few outings where that happens. Believe it or not, we're on the last game of the day, which is good because it's coming up on 4:50 and I got to get to this fantasy draft at some point. Fat pulling in 29% ownership on DK. It makes a lot of sense, but yeah, that takes the gleam off of the play for sure. If he's going to be that highly owned, I think it's just a spot that you can say like, well, that would have been a great value spot, but it's more likely to go bust. I do think that kind of leads to some bats on the other side of that, though. If this pitcher is going to be 30% owned against this lineup, I'll take my shots with that lineup now. That's important info. That's where things like ownership come into play. Really, that gives you a very strong position against a very large chunk of that DK field that has a very limited pitcher in play. He should be on that value board, but not at that extent. That's too much. Dimitri, I think Cole Irvin is a somewhat reasonable pivot. For 5,000, what's his ownership on DK? Anybody know? Let's say he's owned like half what Brandon Pfaadt is projected for. 24%. All right, that's still kind of high. It's not crazy high. I know it's DK, so that's not crazy high. But yeah, I was hoping for a little bit lower. But any discount that you can get, I mean, you're paying a little bit less, and you're getting an ownership discount against the worst team in baseball, who also doubles as by far, when they're facing a lefty, the worst run creation unit in all of baseball against either hand. So there's tons of upside available for Cole Irvin here. There's plenty of strikeouts in that lineup, 28.4%. He's just not that good. But he's, at worst, right now, equivalent to Brandon Pfaadt, and he's in a much better matchup. I don't think it's crazy to say that you prefer Cole Irvin to Brandon Pfaadt, given the ownership numbers, given the $600 discount. I don't think that's nuts. They're the two highest owned, then Strider. All right. So everybody's taking those value plays on DK. It could honestly pay then to just say, all right, I'm going to forego the extreme values. I'm going to work my SP2s in that $7,000 range. Who's the next most reasonable? It's 1, 2. They project right. You know, it's correct given how they project for those low prices. I mean, maybe you say like, no, meh. Singer at 69. It's a big price hike from 5,000 or 56, but it's somewhat reasonable. Sandoval, obviously, an even bigger jump at 72. I think it might pay to just say like, hey, I'm gonna forgo the extreme value guys because those are too terrible pitchers. This is the one that seems more likely to burn you. But given that we're talking about like pushing 50% of at a 200% ownership on that DK pitcher board now, that's a non-insignificant chunk going to two really bad pitchers. If you just say, hey, I'm going to start using as my SP2s, I'm going to take Dane Dunning at 74. I'll take a few shots with Hendo at 72 against the Pirates. Even Sandoval at 72 against the Mets. Bassett at 8,000 against the Guardians. If you can work these guys in, maybe instead of these guys, I do think that might give it an advantage. You need both to not get there, obviously, and you need to make the right decisions around bats around the more expensive plays. But just because those people are going to be getting, even if they do go to those discount pitchers and they succeed somewhat, they still got to get their bats, right? Just going to those guys and having higher access to higher end bats or higher end pitchers isn't going to guarantee success, and it's going to lead a lot of those people down a lot of the same construction paths. So I think it's one of those opportunities where just on a very, very large slate, just say, hey, huge portion of the field is going off that way into the woods. Let's just take this path over here. And you find yourself just in a completely different construction path than such a large chunk of the field. So I think that's kind of interesting. Larry says, Fat, Irvin, Strider, Cease, Senga. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that in terms of the ownership on the three high end guys. They were the three highest end guys on my board. So that last game, let's get back to that real quick here. Spencer Strider, top of the board, 50-point FanDuel projection, 12-8, 12,000. Spencer Strider, he was on form last time out. 10 strikeouts, 1 walk, 1 hit, 7 innings against this same Giants team in Atlanta last time around. Similar upside. Spencer Strider, upside for days and days and days. Game before that was 7 innings against the Mets, 6 Ks, 4 walks, no earned, 3 hits. 3 strikeouts, 6 earned run mess against the Pirates. Before that, he had a run of 9, 10, 13, 10, 11, 9, 10, and 9 strikeouts. Gave up some home runs, some runs scored in each of those games, or many of those games. But just the most elite strikeout option in baseball, going up against the Giants lineup that is going to feed some strikeouts in his direction. There is nothing in the world that would stop me from playing some Spencer Strider on this slate. He just has the absolute highest ceiling. He has the highest projection by a pretty wide margin. Room to grow beyond the projection. Most expensive pitcher. That's limiting, but there's tons and tons of value, obviously. So I think it's a easy enough spot to get to given all the value pricing. Obviously, this is going to be where a ton of people that go to Brandon Pfaadt and Cole Irvin go. So if you can find your way to a Spencer Strider and Dane Dunning combination, let's say, and sacrifice a bat somewhere, I think that's going to be a very, very strong combination. Giants on the other side, Logan Webb, 9,200, 9,900. Fair pricing for Logan Webb, but doesn't really project well. He ran into this matchup the other day, did not really succeed. 24.2% strikeout rate for him, a 7.5% barrel rate, 2.69% home runs that went up after he faced the Braves the other day, 1.9 degree average launch angle. Typically, Logan Webb is fantastic at keeping the ball in the yard, fantastic at keeping the ball down. Against this elite home run hitting Braves, even he is a victim to home run downside. So it's difficult. Pitches very well at home, if I remember. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of home road splits, but if I remember, there's major upside for Webb in home starts, or major results for Webb in home starts. Not necessarily predictive, but I just don't love throwing pitchers into great lineups, and this is a great Braves lineup. Projected to get Ozzie Albies back, so they get even stronger. Albies slots in second if he plays, 267, 327, 514, 28 home runs in 510 plate appearances. Started the season saying it, and we're going to end the season saying it. Ozzie Albies probably the best second baseman in baseball. He's fantastic when it comes to power, when it comes to his production. He was getting way underappreciated early in the season when he was hitting further down the lineup. He was way underpriced. We were harping on it time and time again in articles at that point in the season. He finally moved up to the second spot, got the recognition he deserved, having just an elite season at the plate. Love Ozzie Albies. Ronald Acuna Jr. needs no introduction. 28 homers, 58 steals, a 165 WRC+. Super duper star off the top of the lineup. Austin Riley, one of the best third basemen in the sport. Matt Olson, one of the best first basemen in the sport. Sean Murphy, one of the best catchers in the sport. Marcelo Ozuna and Eddie Rosario, two very good veteran outfielders with power. 28 home runs for Ozuna, 20 home runs for Rosario, 20 home runs for Sean Murphy. 11 home runs for Michael Harris. Slides back down the lineup to where he seems to be a little bit more comfortable. 106 WRC plus for him, 282, 329, 445. Michael Harris and Orlando Arcia at the bottom of the lineup, one of the best bottom of the lineups in all of baseball. 14 home runs on the season for Arcia. Got a shot to get everybody in this day-to-day lineup over 20 home runs. It would be a stretch for Harris to get to 20 at this point. They've got a shot to be, I believe the record, I think they tied the record with 6. Oh, no, it's 5. The record is 6 guys with 25 home runs in a single lineup, and they've got a shot at getting to 7. I believe the record was 6. Either they tied the record or they came into one short of the record. But just outrageous home run output for this team all season long. So even against Logan Webb, you can see what he does to their home run marks, right? His quality cuts into their home run numbers. Most of these guys, at least up here, hey, shut up. At least up here would be above 10 on most days against most pitchers, and they're not today. So definitely some home run upside for the Braves, but limiting by Logan Webb potentially. A little bit of a both-sided situation. If you do go to Webb shares, I think you do take Braves. If you go to Braves, you don't necessarily have to take Logan Webb shares, but he's got enough talent. The price is a little high, though. 92.99 going up against the Braves. I don't love that spot. Giants side of things, kind of the same story as like throwing Logan Webb against the Braves. I don't love throwing bats against Spencer Strider. As gettable as he's been at times this year, still only a 3.03% home run rate overall. A 2.86 xFIP is spectacular, given how much he strikes guys out. It's just a bad spot. If you go to the Giants, Lamont Wade, Thairo Estrada, Wilmer Flores, Jock Peterson, Michael Conforto are the priorities, the top 5 there. Get some of the lefty power with Lamont Wade, Jock Peterson, and Conforto, and then build in the pop and the speed that Estrada offers with a little bit of on-base skills. Wilmer has a little bit of everything. Good on-base skills, decent power, 18 home runs at 241 ISO. Good enough for value, 3,900, 3,000, triple position eligible on FanDuel, dual position on DK. It's just that they're going up against Spencer Strider. Back into the lineup, J.D. Davis, Patrick Bailey, Wade Meckler, Paul DeJong on this team now. Limited options toward the back end. A lot of right-handed hitters too. Not really getting a ton of pop. So don't love the Giants here. Spencer Strider firmly up top. Braves bats, potentially somewhat limited spot for them, but also possibly less popular. Logan Webb as the last option on the board. Giants not really that much on the board for me. Laureano in Will Brennan scratch, says Power. It's important info. Webb's been very good at home this season, says Chuck. Yeah, thought so. I remembered hearing that somewhere along the way. Let's take a quick look at the board here. We'll pop over to the home run board real quick. Shohei at the top of the board. Obviously, we don't know what impact the elbow is going to have. That's the one major question mark with Shohei. A lot of power showing for the Dodgers. Several guys above the magic number there. The Angels with Ohtani. Logan O'Hop down here. Brandon Drury right there. A little bit below the magic number, but close. Big slate. Only 13 guys above the magic number. Jack Suwinski was the home run pick of the day. Just thought he was like the most non-obvious option out of all these guys. Freddie Freeman obviously showing a ton of power in with these other Dodgers. Kyle Schwarber, tons of power leading off for the Phillies. Just a great day-to-day spot for home run upside. Luis Robert, another great day-to-day home run upside spot. Talked about liking the spot for the Diamondbacks. Some of the power they were showing. Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, Lourdes Gurriel down here. A little bit for Eloy Jimenez to support Lou Bob in that White Sox spot, but that wasn't great. And then on the pitching side, we've talked through most of this. Larry says it's 5:01. I know, buddy. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to lose a couple minutes of the show for the people who are just starting it now at the beginning on the YouTube record, but whatever. They'll deal. So Spencer Strider off the top, very, very obvious, extremely expensive. Everybody's going to go to him if they can. Everybody's going to get it to very similar builds when they go to him. So just keep in mind on differentiation. Maybe you don't go directly to the Fat or Irvin play. You try to get to like a Dane Dunning, even a Kyle Hendricks maybe alongside Strider. Dylan Cease, much more affordable, excellent projection, fantastic matchup against the A's. But I do think that's both-sided, given all the power that's in that A's lineup now, given some of the interesting bats, cheap pricing, and the fact that Cease is a little bit gettable. I do think that's a both-sided situation. Kind of interesting to me. Kodai Senga, Also a both-sided situation with all the power that the Angels were showing. He's got tremendous upside for strikeouts. He's been good all year. 10.9, 9.6. I think it's the right price. He projects out accurately. Going to be a little bit popular, it sounds like, but I think well worth it. Plenty of strikeouts for him in that Angels lineup. Yu Darvish, enough strikeouts to support the projection. He's been pitching mostly like Yu Darvish for most of the season, or like this older version of Yu Darvish. 9,100, 8,500, not all that expensive, easy enough to get to, especially when you compare him to like Hunter Green, who's going to be probably limited. We're not sure. Don't really know what the pitch count's going to look like. Don't really know what the depth looks like. If he gets through 5 and he's clean, do they pull him and say, hey, congratulations, kid, good job, well pitched, and sit him down if he's got a bunch of strikeouts in his pocket? Not really sure what to expect from Hunter Green, and I really like that Arizona lineup on the other side, and they check strikeouts and draw walks. Problematic spot for Hunter Green. Sonny Gray, I like the opportunity. He's been pitching really well all season. Not projected at the top of the board, but not going to draw top of the board type of ownership, and a little bit discounted by comparison to some of the more expensive pitchers. Chris Bassett against that Guardians lineup, there's obviously upside for innings pitched. Get me through 6 or 7, find 6 or 7 strikeouts, pitch cleanly, get to the bonuses. I think we're in business for the way that he's priced. Sandoval, more of an opportunity, I think, to maybe limit the Mets a little bit, but the price is okay. 86.72, projects out just fine, has an upside for strikeouts on the right night. Bryce Miller against Kansas City, I like a lot. There's a lot of pitching on this slate. Mitch Keller against Chicago, I don't like the FanDuel price that much. He doesn't project great. He projects okay, but he projects when he's really worth it, he projects like it, right? We see him up toward the top when he's really worth it. I think this is just kind of a middling spot for Mitch. So given that he's priced kind of high by comparison to some of these guys, I kind of prefer some of these guys. But I do think upside-wise, ceiling-wise, he's got one of the higher ceilings through these guys. Tanner Bybee against Toronto, not a great matchup. He's been excellent. 25.9 in the FanDuel scale. It's probably about right. 98 is a little high for that, but 83 on the DK board for the relative projection would probably be worthwhile. Hendricks, Dunning, both probably on the value board. Hendricks more by virtue of just a good matchup against the Pirates, find you some clean innings. Dunning, I think, does have sneaky strikeout upside again going up against that Twins lineup. Might not work out, but the price is right to find out for it. Then you got Brandon Pfaadt with the extreme discount bow tie. Cole Irvin, even more extreme discount. Wedged in between them, Logan Webb in a terrible matchup against the Braves. Singer even at the bottom of the lineup. Hell, you can even throw Michaelis into the mix if you really, really wanted to. If you're really just hunting for clean innings at 6,300, he's got the potential to go 6 or 7 against the Phillies and keep them off the board. It's still probably not going to be a massive strikeout total, and I like the Phillies lineup a lot better than I like the Michaelis side of it, but he's got a little potential. Chris Sanchez, not really seeing it for him against all those righties, but a little bit of potential. He's pitching fairly well. Lance Lynn hiding down here against the Red Sox at the bottom of the board. This is a deep pitching slate. Dimitri Dunning's home run percentage this year is pretty good. 2.59%, 9.8% barrels. Giving up a little bit more in terms of the hard hits this year. A little bit more exit velo. Keeping barrels down, though, a little bit more than last year. And just, reliably in this 2s range. Not completely elite at limiting home runs, but focused on ground balls, focused on keeping launch angle down overall as a pitcher. Chuck says, super plus home run weather in Philly, Toronto, and Baltimore. Roof open in Toronto. All right, gang. Think that's going to be about it for me. Got to get over to this fantasy draft, figure out how I'm getting there, figure out who I'm even taking tonight. There's a chance if you're in the Discord, I might throw up on open Discord for a little bit during the draft and say what's up and share some of the experience. But we'll see whether that happens or not. I might just have some beers and relax and focus on the draft. But I appreciate it. I'll be out of the way tonight, so somebody go out there and go win something. Good luck out there. Chuck says Dunning low home run rate, 0.9 home run per 9. Yeah, that's another way to look at it. Andrew Jennison, all caps, says take Rashawn Johnson. All right, keep it in mind. Would Tara be asking for draft help in Discord? It's not out of the question. Good luck out there, gang. Somebody go win something. I'll see you later. Appreciate it.